Hello, everybody. Greetings and salutations to everyone. Welcome to the Timeless Gamer Show, where our games and our bodies may grow out of date, but our gaming experiences will forever remain timeless. And we are now going live in Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And for all of our old videos, you can still check them out by going to the YouTube channel, Timeless Gamers Show. You can also check our website. It's timelessgamers.com. And you can also listen to us talk by going to all of the major audio streaming platforms out there just by searching Timeless Gamers Show. And we'd like to take this opportunity to thank uh, our co-affiliates, BitMap Books and Streamyard, and also a shout out to our Retromancy cohorts, Shuffle Emporium and Studio.ph, which they are currently in the Recollects gaming convention right there at the QQ Mall, Recto, Manila, and they're there for this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, August 17th and August 18th of 2024. Thank you for Suju.ph and Chapel Emporium for being the representative of Retromancy Incorporated. And also a shout out to our gaming friends, the Sega Mega Masters podcast, and of course, the retro gamers and collectors of the Philippines. So previously on Timeless Gamer Show, we had the honor and privilege of interviewing one of the pioneers, per se, of the gaming scene back in the early '90s and the 2000s, Sir Eric Wahlberg. Um, to all of you who are familiar with his work, like um, Eternal Champions in the Mega Drive, Eternal Champions CD on the Sega CD. Uh, uh, what are the boxing game?
Knockout Kings.
Knockout Kings, yeah. Knockout
Yeah,
King,
yeah.
Knockout Kings 2000 and 2001. A few other things like Mystaria, of
Mm.
course. If you are very curious on what he had to say about his time in Sega and his time outside of Sega, please check out that episode. It was a very fun discussion to say the least.
Mm.
For this evening, for this episode, it's episode 105, guys. It's all about video game controllers. Alrighty,
Mm.
controllers,
Yeah.
and the episode has been suggested by one of our own there, Sir Viraj. Basically, this episode is going to be his. This episode is going to be his dissertation. It's going to be
Dissertation.
a thesis, all right, of the different kinds of gaming controllers that we had uh, since the beginning of time, since the beginning
Well,
of our gaming history as we know it up until now. It's like an evolution of sorts. All right.
yes.
Me and Sir Joel we're just here for flavor text, really.
Right.
Sharing our personal experience with the controllers that Sir Viraj will be showing and discussing to us. He's gonna be doing the objective stuff. Me and Sir Joel, we're just gonna do the subjective stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
And so joining for us tonight, Sir Joel.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are. This is Joel Baclito, the Banyaga Native channel here on Twitch and on Kick. Saying hi to everybody and giving feedback on how these joysticks feel, how they feel in the hand, how they handle, and telling everybody how they just jumped out at me. Anyway, back to you, Joe.
All right. Thank you for that, Sir Joel. And of course, the master controller, master controller of tonight's episode, Sir Viraj of the Sega Mega Masters.
Master Control. That's an X-Men reference, isn't it? Anyway,
We
so
can think on Master Control Program, Anyway,
Master Control program. It's a
yeah.
reference, But yeah, we're going to be talking about. I've got a whole collection of controllers here. This is like my collection that I've got here. I don't have everything, but we'll have a JDM. He's done a pre-recording. We'll have his take. sadly can't be here, but we're going to have that as well in the show, and his take on his controller collection. But yeah, it really is a story about how we're going to do it chronologically, so from the earliest controllers going forward, and how controllers and how they've impacted how we play games, and how they've changed throughout the consoles in time, and how the consoles have forced the controllers to evolve with them. You know what I mean. So I haven't got the words for it right now, but it should be a lot of fun. This episode should be a lot of fun, and it's very interesting just to have a look at just how much evolution has happened from controller to controller. And I'll probably be faffing about leaving the screen, fetching a controller, because there's just so much. You can't see it, but there's just so much here for me to pick up. Yeah, and I will have to leave and just pick something from my collection, because I just have so much going on. But it should be fun. All right, so
This should be fun. Yes. So we are not going to do a show and tell, because this episode is going to be one big show and tell anyway.
yeah,
Right.
I'll try. I know this is in the audio section here listening, so I'm going to be as descriptive as possible. I'm mindful of those audio listeners, but I'm sure a lot of you know what I'm talking about anyway. But it's just to cross the T's and dot the I's. Right, so let's begin, shall we, with the first controller that I have in my collection, and here it is. This is the Atari 2600 console controller. It was known as the CX40 stick, and it is just rudimentary. Well, it's just a stick and one button. That's all it was, and it will plug into your Atari. Now, the Atari had 4 controller inputs, strangely enough, so you could actually play 4-player. I don't know what games had 4-player support, but you had 4 players on there. You got the nice simple button here, and you do this. Now, this controller isn't the original one. This is the one I got for the Atari 400 Mini, but it is still the same mold. That's why I pulled it out here. And my original one, I've lost all this orange writing up here is all faded away in time. So I wanted to show you the detailing here. Let's just pull it up here. So there's a bit that says top, so you know which side is the top, so what direction you're going in, and how you should be holding it. Now, you'd hold it like this as you're playing, and like this, or you'd have it on your lap like this when playing it. I think that's what it was. So not the most comfortable controller to hold in today's standards. And it's quite a light controller, to be fair. I mean, this is a replica, even the original is quite light. As time has gone on, my original rubber bit around here has gotten really stiff. So you got the stick here and a button, and you got the little rubber bit around the stick here. That after time, this is just going to go really stiff. It's just the way rubber works. It's just going to happen. It's an analog style controller. It just basically just rocks onto a switch underneath it, and that's basically all it really did fundamentally. And you're probably thinking, how can you play a game with one button? For a lot of us looking at this, thinking, what? Well, there were loads of games that, like back in those days, you had Pac-Man that didn't even need a button. It's just literally the D-pad, and that's all the game was. But you also have games like Berserk, where it's like a top-down game where you're controlling a guy and you use the button to fire. Very simple, like Space Invaders, Missile Command. Very simple games that just required, a directional input and an action button. That's all it was back then. And to change the controller settings or the settings of the games, the controller switches were on the Atari themselves. For those of us that remember, they're actually on the console. So you flip a switch to have it set to a different option or a different mode or a harder setting or whatever. So, yeah, the Atari CX40 stick in a nutshell. That's what it is. I'm not saying this is how gaming started. This is a second generation system. So there was actually systems before this which had similar controller styles. It was just literally a stick and a button, maybe 2 buttons. One was for options, really, and that was it. I did actually have a paddle controller as well. I spoke to Sir Joel just before we started, and sadly I haven't got that to hand. But it was basically just a dial.
Well, I'm surprised you don't have a Pong console lying there anywhere, or a Fairchild.
I don't have.
I mean, Sir Joel knows that.
I was there at the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo last week, and they were actually in full display. They had the 2-player Magnavox, the ones that were the telegames ones that were exclusively Pong games, and those had paddle controllers. What do you call those? Essentially the rotating.
Paddles.
The paddles. Yeah, in essence, yeah. And
it's weird.
We had fun.
You're turning wheels.
Yes, exactly.
Like
there you go.
Wow.
And we had fun. Honestly, they are a lot of fun if you're playing with somebody else, especially with your bro. You guys are trying to psych each other out as to all right, I'm headed this way, but I'm actually bouncing the ball a different direction. It's a lot of fun. Surprisingly, gameplay is there. Honestly, the gameplay is there.
Right. So that's the Atari simply, and then obviously after that, I have to think what other system shall I show you in terms of a controller, and the next step in controller evolution, perhaps. Here in the United Kingdom, I mean, I know that the NES would be the next step forward, but here in the United Kingdom, I'm sure many of you are aware at home that that there are a lot of microcomputers during this time, and none shouted as loud as the Commodore 64. And whilst it was basically you could control the games with the keyboard and a mouse. Not a mouse. You just had a keyboard. So I'm getting confused with the Amiga here. There's a keyboard. That's what you control it with. But you'd also have this thing here, which we call the Stick of Joy. Now this is one taken from my Commodore 64 Mini. Now these 4 buttons didn't exist on the original, and neither did these two.
I think we should blur that out.
Sorry, what did you say?
I think we should blur that out for some reason.
The Stick of Joy. That's what people call it. That's what it's called, the Stick of Joy. That's what the code name for it. Stick of Joy. I know I know what you're thinking when you look at this, because you might want to do something with it.
For those who are listening to us right now.
Right. So this stick it's a red stick with a bulb on top of it. So you've got a ball top on the end, whereas the Atari that I showed before was a hexagonal stick. It had a hexagonal grip around it. Whereas this one's purely round, a lot more comfortable. Sadly, this doesn't have any micro switches on it. I know the Atari Maxi has micro switches, but again, an analog style controller. And you've got 2 action buttons here. So unlike with the Atari, you had 1, you have 2. So again, a step in control evolution, a bit more comfortable to play, actually, if we're being honest, as a grip. I remember when, as a kid, the hexagonal points on that controller on the Atari would dig, whereas this is actually a lot more comfortable, and you could do a lot more with it. So that's fundamentally it, the Commodore 64. And again, you had loads of games on there. Turrican is one of the main games I remember that a lot of people used to sing on, love playing on that thing. Again, I never owned an Atari, but I did know people who had. Sorry, I never owned a Commodore, but I did know people who had, because it was slightly before my time, and I was too young to really appreciate microcomputers. And with the Atari, it was my father, so I did play it. So this was a revolution thing. And like I said, out of all the microcomputers, the Commodore 64 is the one that most people played and got their hands on. That was like the industry standard here. There was the ZX Spectrum, of course, but that's for the I don't want to sound like a snob, but for the poorer people, they could get the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. It was a much more inferior system, but there you had that. You had the Amstrad CPC, which you had the wrong system if you had that. And if you were rich, you had an Amiga 500. That's basically
honestly, those alternative gaming platforms, we have to do an episode of that sometime in the future, because there are some really good games on them.
Yeah. So that was it. And so that's the Commodore. But let's get to the main meat and potatoes, the one that everyone would think is like really, really great. Not so much in UK, but the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now this is a Nintendo Switch Online version of that controller. I could have got it. I didn't want to mess around with cables. I'll be honest. You just need to see the face of it. So again, you have these iconic 2 red buttons here. And this whole design is iconic. And it's a tactile sort of grip they've got on it. So that's what I found really interesting. And this is the thing that a lot of people say. Nintendo invented the D-pad. This was their innovation. It was the first sort of main controller that a lot of people have a kinship to. And there's also the Famicom version of this. Obviously, the first console Nintendo created was called the Nintendo Famicom, and it had a golden backing plate and red, a lovely
and
royal
personally
red.
Speaking, it's the superior design, if you ask me. Okay.
Yeah, because and I'll tell you why. My father bought me a NES as a child, and I think I've said this on previous calls. I never really got on with it, and the reason being is the pointy aspects of this rectangle.
It's very edgy, I guess the right word for it. Yeah.
Not very ergonomic. No.
Not very ergonomic. That's right.
And for a young person, it dug into my palms. It was uncomfortable. I didn't get on with it. Okay. I didn't really enjoy playing Mario Brothers. That was the first game. And a lot of people are like, what? You didn't enjoy Mario Brothers? What's wrong with you? I just didn't get on with the game. I didn't get on with the controller. I also had that the NES Zapper light gun that came with it. Sadly, I don't obviously have one to hold, but that was
Mm-mm.
the NES unit. And again, my hands were too small to get around it, but that was another input device. But this was, for a lot of people, this is actually a revolutionary controller because you've got the D-pad, a digital input to really, play games and have a really good sense of control. Really push your characters with platformers like, the Mario Brothers trilogy, Mega Man. That had some tight controls on the NES, and I really did enjoy that game. And you got the two controllers right next to each other, two action buttons next to each other, and you got a start and select button. You got an extra input there. So even though as video games got more and more advanced, so I played Afterburner on the NES, and I know that hang about, you're playing a proper arcade game on the NES. How are you even going to play it with this thing? Because as you know, for someone who plays that game, you've got one for missiles and one for shooting your gun. How are you going to turbo your jet? And the select button, or I think it's the start button, one of those two, actually gets your jet. You basically turbo your jet pushing that button, and this obviously controls the direction you go into, and you can move your jet that way. So actually, that button becomes an action button of sorts, the select button with arcade-based games, and there are a lot of arcade ports in theirs. And going forward, if you are really wealthy, I've got this thing here. This is a treat for you guys because nobody has this really. People do have it. That's it. This thing. So this is a mold of the NES Advantage stick. Okay, so it's exactly
the NES Advantage.
The difference is the original Nintendo one would say NES Advantage on there. Okay, it would say NES Advantage going down there, or where it says Amiyo. Now Amiyo have made this. Now this is a third-party accessory for the NES Classic Mini. Okay, or NES in that Classic Mini. And again, you got micro switches here, so it's an analog input system. You got two lovely big action buttons there. So again, great for arcade ports like 1942 or Ghost and Goblins and things like that. You also have turbo buttons as well, and these do light up as well. And again, you can also, you got these little oscillating dials here, which can also you basically adjust the frequency of how the turbo works. You also have the ability to, you got your start and select buttons, and you also got slow as well. And you got a button here that allows you to press B and A together. You got so many options
slow.
Here. So you can
slow button.
Yeah, you got
a slow button.
Yeah.
What
yeah.
games are you supposed to do that slow?
Well, are you supposed to do that? That's why it was called the NES Advantage. It puts you at an advantage.
Like for example, if something's going way too fast, you press that button, it slows everything down.
I haven't really experimented with that button, to be honest. I'm just that good, but right. I'm kidding. It does slow down.
I imagine it runs the pause button multiple times.
Yeah,
that's
what it does.
Yeah.
It runs the pause button, so it slows things down. But yeah,
it presses the pause button multiple times over and over again. So that like you said, Joe, if the game's running too fast for your liking, you turn that on. You move. It renders the game into slow motion unless you see the pause word coming up all the time in the middle of the screen. Anyway, so.
So it's quite a weighty block, It's got you got the two red buttons. You got, I don't know, because they talk about sticks and the gates that are in. Then this is a perfect round gate, but you do have 8 directions on this round gate of the stick you got there. You can hear it clicking away because it has got micro switches under it. But yeah, you got these 2 buttons. You got 2 auto fire buttons we can push on here, and it will just hold that button. And all it's doing is holding that button down. That's all it does. You have dials above that, if you want to control the frequency. So you have extra control there, and you have obviously. The start select and other further option controls there. If you want to press B and A together button, then you got a slow down button. So a very interesting block of you got there, and you also got the little grips at the bottom, so you can have it on a table, and it really is quite comfortable to play. And I enjoy playing with this controller a lot, to be honest, when playing on my NES Mini. So yeah, a really good controller and an accessory for an 8-bit system. There were other controllers for the NES as well. Also, you had a much more comfortable NES controller with the top-loading NES that came out. Obviously, that had the soft round bits around the edges, so it was more comfortable to hold. And you also had the one which was also made by the people who made the NES Advantage, which was, you basically had 2 sticks that came out, and you got like a thumbstick instead of a D-pad. I don't know if you know that one, and you also got 2 buttons there. So you had some more advanced controls. So the NES did get a lot of support in terms of how it played. So there's that. And then after the NES, we had, obviously, this is going to be something interesting. And I know I've already showed this when we did the Master System versus NES episode, but I'll show it again. This is the Master System controller. There we go. a nice little controller. Just a little. It's actually a little bit smaller than the NES controller, but the corners aren't as sharp. You know, they're actually quite rounded, and very comfortable buttons as well. So the buttons here are concave. There's two action buttons, 1 and 2. On the NES, you had the A and the B, or NES, A and the B. These are convex buttons, okay? Whereas if you look at the NES, they're concave. So your thumbs can actually go into the dip. So they have a bit more of a long grip. The benefit of a convex style button is it's easy for your thumb to slip onto that one and move to the other one, whereas the other one sort of grips them a bit. So Nintendo, and we'll touch on the concave convex button aspect of it as well in more detail with the next generation of systems. But this is what I want to draw your attention to, the control buttons itself. Now, it's a mushy D-pad style thing. So they didn't, obviously, because Nintendo had the pattern on their D-pad, Sega couldn't exactly copy that, could they? They had to be different. Now, obviously, you know, it's you benefit in certain areas because you got better with diagonal input, shall we say. But in terms of contact, you know, and people did criticize this controller because it wasn't as good as the NES in terms of precision. And I think that's where the Master System sort of lets itself down. It's just rudimentary as part of the control. It's much more comfortable to put your thumb on, that's for sure. And I did enjoy the feeling of having it around there, but it wasn't as easy to make contact. And it's just one of those things where I did actually have to unscrew this at one point and just clean the contacts because you get dust that gets in there, and that's one of those things. One of the biggest failings of this controller is where's the start and select buttons? Where's the pause button? And as we know, the Master System had the pause button on the console. That's how silly it was. I don't know why Sega did it, but that's them. So that's the Master System. That was Sega's 8-bit.
Yeah, that design on the thumb pad will lend itself to a lot of blisters. I know that feel. Yeah, because
way too many blisters. Way too many I can count.
All right. So yeah, the Master System had that controller. It also had its own little arcade little stick as well. Sadly, I don't have it with me to show, but Sega had their own version of the NES Advantage, and that was really cool. It had a nice big grip on the thing. And you also had the light phaser gun with the Master System. And the Master System, in my opinion, had better light gun games, you know. But that's just my opinion. But even then, there were gallery shooters at best. There wasn't as much going on. And you know, going to the next generation, and this is where things get really interesting. This is the main controller I did a lot of my gaming in my youth. And this is the there we go, the original Sega Mega Drive or Genesis for you in America controller. And what can I say about this controller? You know, it's big, it's meaty, you can put your hands on it, you know, it's not too small. As an infant, my hands were too small, but I could always, how I play it is I just put my hands like this and play it like this. But as your hands grew into it, it's a very comfortable controller. So for those of you in the audio section of the podcast, we've gone away from that rectangular design of a control pad to more of a batarang, you know, from it's like Batman design.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
So you have this, and it's again you got this lovely, comfortable bit that just slots into your palm. Yeah, slots into your palm, doesn't poke into your palm, slots into it comfortably. You can get your hands around this thing very easy. Your thumbs rest around it, and the D-pad on this was comfortable. And in my opinion, people say Nintendo invented the D-pad, whereas Sega innovated a much more comfortable D-pad. This is the most comfortable style D-pad ever because, okay, you got the cross there, but you also have the ability to pivot it diagonally. So I think that's really clever, and it made playing games so much more comfortable. Let's have a look at it. You've got a start button now, so we can start and stop the game, and it's nowhere near the main trigger buttons. And these are some big buttons here you got. Yeah, concave buttons, you can easily just slide your fingers over and off. Yeah, so you have that. I did so much gaming on this, and it's so comfortable, you know. And I've actually had to revert back to this controller because, you know, eventually they did go and make a 6-button controller for this as well. Now, the 3-button controller, so we've got an evolution from it, and we've got another button now, so we've got 2 buttons to 3. And that meant that the games could be a bit more advanced. We can have an extra input for a game. And from 8-bit to 16-bit, they really did perfect 2D gaming. And whilst you got games like Sonic the Hedgehog, which you don't really need 3 buttons for, it's actually a 1-button input game. And it's actually quite clever how that game is. It's so easy to get games in there. But you have games like Golden Axe, for example, and that's really what utilizes these buttons. So you got your jump, which is C or B, whatever way you want to have the controls designed to you. B's your action button, I would think, and A would be for magic. So you have your special button, and that's what it was. It was a special attack or a special button. So you had another dimension, another facet of gaming. Oh, what does the A button do in this video game? A lot of Mega Drive games earlier on only used 2 action buttons. In fact, the A button wasn't used because games hadn't evolved around the 16-bit. A lot of them were still...
If I'm going to interject something, one of the things that this is just maybe a nitpick of mine. When I started playing with the Mega Drive Genesis controller, playing games like Altered Beast, Golden Axe, and Streets of Rage, because we are so accustomed in using the A button first, right? Especially with Golden Axe.
Yeah.
I press the A button right immediately. Oh shit! I already used my magic.
There we
What
go.
the hell?
It's muscle memory. It's muscle memory, and it's what you're used to. Because if you grew up with NES, you think A, B, but obviously you have to look at the order in which the buttons are laid out. And Sega had their own layout, and Nintendo had theirs with their triggers. Obviously, Nintendo's BA, and Sega's A, B, and C with this particular layout. And it happens, but you can. I think what I liked about Sega with a lot of the games, you go into the options menu, you can actually configure what button does what for what you want to be comfortable. So, for example, there's a game called Bonanza Brothers. It only has a 2-button input. So I'd always have it as C as jump and B would be action, and A would be the jump button. But some people prefer B to be jump and A to be action or whatever, or C to be action. You can do that. You can configure the control. So it's a minor nitpick, if we're being honest. You can always change the control figures around if you want to map it to your liking with a lot of the games. So, but this is really what I did a lot of my gaming on. I love this controller.
And of course, it was impossible to use when Street Fighter 2 came out. They had to develop the 6-button controller. Yeah.
Right.
How it would work with Street Fighters, you'd have to press the pause button.
Yes, exactly. To shift from punch to kick.
And
all right, we're gonna do this early. Ain't nobody got time for that. You better get a 6-button controller if you're going to do games like Street Fighter 2 on the Mega Drive or Genesis.
Oh, and last bit about the original Mega Drive controller. It's a controller that Batman would have used. Anyway.
The friggin' bat. But even the 6-button, this is a Batarang design as well.
Yes, that's true.
This is the retro bit version. I have actually got an original, but I just wanted to throw this one out because it's wireless. Easy. I don't get tangled with the cable. But you have, a 6-button. You've got these 3 extra buttons here. I'll just put it close to the camera. You've got X, Y, and Z or Z up there. So you have those 3 up there. You'd have a mode button on the left-hand side here that lets you toggle certain settings. These 2 buttons here, ignore those 2 because they wouldn't have been on the original controller and the home and select. They're just for this wireless controller. But you've got the start button here. And you also have a really nice D-pad as well. That's nice and comfortable. That rocks as well. And you have these 3 action buttons. So again, for Street Fighter, really good because it exactly maps out the arcade. Top 3 buttons for your punches and the bottom ones for the kicks or whatever you want to have it laid out.
Another question. With the game X-Men, is it X-Men Clone Wars? We know that game that you start off in the danger room and you're supposed to choose a stage, but you're supposed to use the select button. But you can't do that if you're using the 3-button layout. You can only use the 6-button controller for that because you need to press the select button to actually go to a stage of your choosing.
You mean the mode button?
Yeah.
The mode.
Is it the select or the mode button? I'm not sure.
So X-Men 2. It starts off you play as a character in the danger room or whatever. And then you get into the level select mode afterwards. You get to that button. That's it.
The level select. Yeah.
Right. I used the 6-button controller to play, but I didn't use any of the mode buttons. I just used the D-pad and select.
Yeah, because apparently, if you're using the 3-button controller, you can't do shit.
I haven't really played through that game, so I don't know. But I'll have to look at that and wonder what that query if that's the case. But oh well, it is what it is, I guess. It is what it is, I guess. But yeah, you have more functionality with a 6-button controller, and that may very well be the case.
Always get a 6-button controller, kids.
But I will say this, and this is true. We had you can see on the Mega Masters channel. I played Revenge of Shinobi. We were reviewing it, and I was playing it with this controller. And when you play a game like that, where you're constantly pushing buttons, it got very uncomfortable when I was fighting the last boss. because these buttons are a lot smaller than the original 3 buttons that you got here. Can you see it? It's a much smaller controller in terms of the triggers. So that's actually a 3-button game. What I did in the end was, this is getting really, I'm starting to get blisters on my thumb now because I'm pushing these too hard. I went back to using the 3-button controller, and it's much more comfortable, and I beat the boss a lot easier. So you might find that this controller, it has its limits. It's a smaller controller, even though it's funny because it's a 6-button controller. It's smaller. Retrobit have actually made a 6-button Star with that mold. So basically, Retrobit have got something called the Big 6, where you've got 3 other buttons now, and you have this mold, so it's a much more comfortable mold. So you actually have that now. So I might have to get one of those, which is really good. But this is still a very good controller for what it is. I just want to quickly show the Japanese version of that because I just happen to have one. Much smaller, isn't it? Because they have smaller hands in Japan. I mean, look at this. So this is what we have in the West, and this is what Japan have. Little baby in it. I've actually got the Switch online version of this as well, which is
slightly smaller. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think Sega of America is trying to project something here.
Well, no, Sega of Japan are happy to. And you know, I actually really like this controller because it's comfortable as well. Like the D-pad, I don't know what it is. They've got more comfortable membranes in there, much more comfortable buttons on there. And this is obviously, you got the mode button I was talking to you about, which is actually the original 6-button controller layout. So you obviously, like I said with the other one, you haven't got the start select. Blue is obviously the Japanese sort of color that they have here, and you got the mode button there. So this is actually the real 6-button controller that was for the Mega Drive. Obviously smaller because it's Japanese, but I like that it's small. I don't mind it being a bit small, but.
No, to be perfectly honest, I've used third-party controllers that are smaller versions of the originals, and they tend to be a little bit more comfortable than the originals, surprisingly.
So that was Sega. Obviously, there was arcade sticks for the Mega Drive. You had a 3-button stick. You had a 6-button stick as well. That was released afterwards. You even had the Sega Menacer light gun as well, so you could play Terminator 2 arcade. And I never had that. We were much too poor back then. I was grateful for what I had. Okay, in terms of those things, I don't think my father was into those sort of gimmicky games with the guns and stuff. You go to the arcade and play those, to be honest. But so the next step, what happened after Sega Mega Drive? Super Nintendo. We got Super Nintendo, didn't we? And this is a controller a lot of people have. Well, what is this? What's with these colors? Obviously, where's the purple gone? That's probably what you're wondering, right? This is the PAL and Japanese style controller. They called it Super Famicom in Japan. You got the American one, the ugly American version. Yeah, I always say that. So with the top 2 buttons, have you noticed that you've got concave buttons on the X and Y? Have you looked at the buttons that they're 2 concave? We're all convex. So 2 top buttons, the X and Y, are concave, aren't they? Yeah. So
yeah.
I think
so the American version, so it's concave for Y and X, and convex for A and B.
Yeah, so we're all concave here, and we've got lovely little colors, on it. So we've got all the Super Nintendo colors, we've got red, yellow, blue, and I like the colors, okay? What can I say? And it matches the design of our Super Nintendo system. We got that D-pad, which is back, and the one thing I didn't like about this controller was the D-pad could really dig into your thumb. Like, they got the little arrows on the D-pad, and if you're playing action games like Street Fighter, some people love this controller because you've got the L and R shoulder buttons. So we've got the innovation of shoulder buttons here, as you can see. Ignore these 2 buttons; they're just for the Nintendo Switch. But these 2 buttons were there on the original. So you have that, and you also got the start and select here, like you would have. So we've got 4 more action buttons if you count the X, Y, and the 2 L and R buttons. Again, what I find really fascinating about this is a lot of the early games didn't even use half the buttons on it. It was mostly just A and B, like the Mega Drive. You had 2 action buttons. Mario Brothers or Mario All Stars, it was just a port, so you'd have that. Even Super Mario World, it was these 2 buttons really, and these are just mapped on to be the same ones. And L and R just let you move, left, it let you pan to the left of the map and the right of the map. You didn't really use them, so it was only games like Super Metroid which used every single button, or Star Fox where you used every button, and those applications were utilized, 1993 onwards with later games. Typically, I should say. A lot of people love this controller. My only criticism is it's a bit small, and because of that D-pad, it can really pinch your thumbs. And I have had blisters playing with that D-pad. So yeah, good evening. Like, we got some people in the chat here. Welcome us. So welcome to the chat. There's a lot of you that we've just totally ignored. So I shouldn't say ignored, but I haven't noticed. So we got Marlon, talking about the limited edition Xbox One controller with the Deadpool Wolverine. I saw that. Sadly, it's only available in America. So that.
We'll America.
Oh, really? That's not worldwide, really.
The Americans are getting everything.
No, I mean you guys can get it, but you have to pay more. So
yeah, I don't care. I don't care that it's a gimmick, but it's probably worth a lot of money. So it's a collectible. You got so you mentioned the PS1 DualShock analog controller. We'll get to that eventually. Kids
still waiting for that Cortana build though.
Variant. Somebody's going to mod it out. Probably going to get a Deadpool one and then paint it blue. I wouldn't be surprised.
I won't be surprised. I saw somebody make a Samus Aran one. I don't know if that's
really. Oh,
yeah, and then like the butt cheeks or something. I don't know. I think that was just made up. I think it was just fantasy. This is one for the guys.
Anything I can get behind with.
Yeah, that's one you get behind with. So Jaden goes, kids be like, why do you have to switch the buttons up? Good point, and you got Baron, was it Baron Noroika?
Baron Noroika, yes.
Mm-hmm. I see we've got Joe RPG's here, obviously, and we got Jay Bertol. Okay, good evening to you too. So anyway, back to the discussion. This is the SNES one. Now going forward, I do actually have this thing, which is for my SNES Classic Mini. It's an accessory, a lovely little arcade stick thing. It's again the same sort of thing. Really fun to play Street Fighter with. Again, you got that, and you got the turbo switches up there for each of the buttons and start and select. That's basically it. This was developed by a company called ASCII originally. This is obviously a mold based on them, and we had it in Europe for us. It's called the Scoremaster. That's what it was called originally, and Amiyo obviously got the rights to the mold or whatever, and then made this. Now, I know a certain YouTuber whose name I will not mention because I don't respect the man at all. But his one came broke, and good for you because you deserved it. Again, he reviewed this, and his one just wasn't working because the solder was cheap. Fortunately, when I got mine, it was working, so these weren't really as good. But it's a good little stick if you want to play Street Fighter on the go. On the if you want, I say on the go.
I realized that on the button side of things, it has a little bit more length, so it can rest your wrist. I guess.
Yes.
If you're a kid anyway.
Yes, you could rest your wrist and you could just have your fingers on there. So you have again, it matches the same grey as my Super Nintendo European edition. There was an American version that's with purple buttons and a purple scheme. I just want to throw that out there as well. But again, you got an oct gate or a round gate stick there, ball top. You have a back top as well that came in the box as well. I just want to throw that out there. Same with the NES one, but I just like the ball top better. Again, some people say, well, back tops are better for fighting game, ball tops for shooters, whatever people say. I don't know what they say. Whatever you prefer. Again, lovely little switches up here. So you got an auto fire switch that controls all of the 6 action buttons here. So you have that, and you also got your start and select. So it's quite a rudimentary system, to be honest. And pretty cool. Again, something I use for my it's got a Clover console for my SNES Classic Mini, but you do have an adapter that allows it to go to USB, so you can use this to PC if you wanted to. So you got multifunction on this particular device, but there was obviously I see a lot of these at gaming markets, to be honest, for the Super Nintendo, and same with the NES Advantage, you can get one of those as well online or whatever, and they're lovely, well-made systems, to be fair. Jay Bertel says, personally, my favorite controller was the 360 controller. I think it included the gaming, was it all-time fame? Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if it's included the gaming all-time.
Hall of Fame, really?
The Xbox 360 controller. It's actually a good controller. I mean, if it, just sidestepping with the Xbox controller, the first one was huge. I remember selling the Xbox when it came out in the shop, and it was a big old thing. But then the Type 2 controller for Xbox was actually a huge improvement. Obviously, with the 360 controller. There you got the Xbox controller, haven't you? Yep. There we go. You pulled it out, and there it is. So.
Yes, we got the Duke, right?
Big fat controller.
Oh, yeah. It is a chunky thing. Yeah. Oh, let me just turn off the...
That's for chunky. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a big chunk.
It was marketed to an audience that were adults. I think that's what they were going for, men. And it was a PC. It was basically a PC at home. I think that's where they were going with the Xbox controller. Lovely. I don't hate it. I just understand why it was big. The Duke, as Jay calls it.
Microsoft wanted to assert dominance.
There we go.
Because they're American, okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well,
America. Yeah.
America! Fuck yeah!
I knew I'd forget this controller, and we have to go back a few years back now because I missed it. I should have showed this before Mega Drive. Actually, this is the NEC PC Engine controller, or the PC Engine Core Graphics. It was called in Europe. They all had different color schemes. Obviously, the American one was a black and I think orange theme, or yellow. We had a blue and black, and the Japanese had a white and red. So, oh yeah, that's the Japanese one. You got that? Lovely, jubbly. So again, you have a D-pad that's very close to the edge, very close to the edge of the controller. It's still a comfortable G-pad, but it's right on the corner, isn't it? And you got your 2 action button, concave, just like a NES. And but the good thing about this controller is you got auto fire. Do you have auto fire on yours, Sir Joe? And you have 2.
Mine, it's concave.
No, I mean the auto fire button switches on top of your action buttons. Have you got those for your PC?
You know what? I'm not even sure what the hell are they for.
Well, the switches. So if you're playing the
so at the bottom there's a 1 dot, in the middle 2 dots.
That's correct. And there's different levels of auto fire.
So, what for?
So if you're playing, I'll tell you what it's for. So say if you're playing Dragon Spirit, it's a shoot 'em up here for the PC engine, right? So say if 1 is your action button. What that does is, say if you put it to 3, it's basically a rapid fire button. It basically, when you hold it down, it'll rapid fire right to 3. Yeah, it's turbo. And you have different levels of turbo, 2 and 3. So that's unique. You've got two different levels. And if you're playing certain shooters, so Dragon Spirit, you have 2 action buttons. So you can shoot down and shoot forward. So you can actually have both on turbo, and it makes the game so much more easier to play. So a lot more fun. You have a start and run button here as well. Pretty cool. Again, so that was obviously a step between the NES and the Mega Drive. So you still got 2 action buttons here. People say the TurboGrafx 16-bit. Yeah, it's had a 16-bit GPU, but it's really an 8-bit console. The way I look at it is it's a souped-up Master System. That's why I look at the Graphics 16. It did very well in Japan, though, the PC Engine. Very well in Japan. It actually beat the Mega Drive, would you believe it?
Those are fighting words.
Yeah, it did, because, no, it did outsell the Mega Drive. When it came out, it was in 1987 in Japan. 88, the Mega Drive had a later release, but this thing had a very late release coming to Europe, and the Mega Drive beat it. So the Mega Drive and Genesis outdid this for us in the Western Hemisphere, but in Japan, the Empire of the Rising Sun, this was actually obviously this is the Japanese version. This was very popular. Saying that, the Japanese version didn't have the turbo fire buttons. It's something that I think the European ones only had. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but I think that's basically the case.
And now we have pretty much the same mold anyway.
Yeah. So there we go. So going forward, so we had to go back for the PC Engine one because I almost forgot it. And I knew I'd forget something. During the mid-90s, and this is where things get really hairy and there were so many consoles released in 1995 because we obviously think about the big 3. Okay, so we all think about the PlayStation, which we'll get to, the Saturn, which we'll get to. It was 94 in Japan, but anyway, we'll get to the Saturn and then 64. But during that 5th generation, you also had these other systems like the Panasonic 3DO, you had the Amiga CD32, the Atari Jaguar. I don't have an Atari Jaguar or a Panasonic 3DO, but I do have a mold of an Amiga CD32 controller to hand, and here it is. This actually comes with the Amiga 500 Mini, or A500 Mini, I should say, because they didn't have the rights for the name Amiga. But what I find really interesting is they've used the same mold. The controller lead is here in the middle, and the original controller actually had the D-pad on this side, I believe, where the action buttons are, and the action buttons where the D-pad were. They've just obviously around to be more conformist to the way things are for the A500 Mini, but I just want to throw that was something different that they did, which I found to be a bit odd. Like, why'd they do that?
The Amiga CD controller was confusing as hell. Like at first, you're thinking that, are you holding it upside down?
Yeah. To be honest, I should actually make an effort and play with my Amiga 500 Mini because you can play Amiga CD32 games on it, which is why they put this controller in the box. But do you know what? To be honest, it's not an uncomfortable controller. It has a lovely little D-pad. Like, this is like a PlayStation style D-pad that they're using. And we'll get to that as well shortly. But yeah, I just want to throw that in there. That was like, there's Amiga 32. There were other systems that tried something, their own controllers. But why try and reinvent something that's proven? The D-pad should always be on the left-hand side. Okay, that's just the way things are. or whatever you want to call it, and the action button's on the right. So I always found that to be a bit strange. So the next system chronologically that was released after Super Nintendo, and if you look at Japan and even in Europe, the Sega Saturn came first before PlayStation. And I have here the Model 1 controller of that. Ta-da! There we go. So this is the Model 1 Saturn controller. There was also a Model 2 as well, which I think is actually the better controller. This actually came with and there were two models of the Saturn, by the way, Model 1 and Type 2 Saturn as well. And I'm not going to go into what the difference is of that. You can always look at them. But we look at the controllers right now. So there we go. And now obviously we got like 6. We kept the 6 action buttons, haven't we? So we got that. We have the addition of L&R buttons now. Sega have added. Okay, so you have little clicky L&R buttons up here that click. You have little switches that click up and down. See a soft start button and a lovely D-pad, a much more cushioned D-pad. There you go. And you have your Type 2 controller there in the box there and your retro bit version. That is the Type 2 controller. Much more comfortable on the grip, I have to say. And I'll say that's the better controller. That's actually the best 6-button controller Sega made, in my opinion. The one that you're holding in your hand. This is still good enough. You've got a good grip there. You've got some butt cheeks here that you can hold on to. So you've got a nice grip to it. So this is the rudimentary Saturn 1 controller. It did the job. Let's put it that way. But the Saturn was always a bit of a hodgepodge of a system because you had some really great 2D games on, and this controller would work on all of them. I also have the Saturn 3D controller. So this is like probably the third controller that they brought out. And this is the first controller, correct me if I'm wrong, chat, which had an analog stick onto it. There we go. So this is it, a lovely big thing. Look at that. A nice round sphere. A good grip, because you've got grips right here you can hold on to. You've got your trigger buttons there, if you want them. So you've got 2 L&R buttons. 6-button arcade style still. You have the analog thing. They're very comfortable to rock around. And you have the D-pad. Now, you've got this button here. Okay. So obviously you got your, obviously that's your start button. You've got this switch here. What does this switch do that goes left to right? Well, the switch actually allows you to switch between a D-pad. So you can use the D-pad, or you can use the analog stick. There we go. So you have a choice to flip these around. You can't play them both together, sadly. You know. So what it's trying to say is, look, if you want to play a 3D game, you click to that. Okay, you want to play Croc's Adventure, you play it with that. If you want to play like a
You know what?
song,
Funny story about that. So when I was trying out my my Sega Saturn for a long while, so I tried using the UFO that controller, the UFO controller, and I'm like, why is my analog stick not working?
yeah.
So I thought, oh shit. So maybe I just need to deep clean it. I open it up, clean it up with alcohol and all that shit, and I plug it in. It's still not working. And then I tried using the switch, pull the switch on it, and like, oh shit, that's all I had to do. Apparently, Sir Virgil right. You cannot you can.
That is a funny story.
It's either you can use the D-pad or the analog stick. You cannot use both. Sadly,
Yeah.
I learned that the hard way.
Goodness me. Another thing I forgot as well that I want to just quickly do it because I know that this is all over the place. This goes back a bit as well with Super Nintendo. I had this thing, the Nintendo Scope 6. It's like a bazooka, you know, as you can see there. It's like a bazooka style light gun, and it came with a cartridge. We had these 6 little mini games we could play with. Like, it was basically like a gallery shooter, and you look through that little lens, and that will give you like an approximate sight and an infrared, and you'd hold it like that and you'd shoot, and that's what it was. I don't want to open it because I'll get polystyrene everywhere, but that's what that is. That's a very iconic light gun for that system at the time. So it was a step up from the Zappa system, the unit that they had. And this went up against the Sega Menacer, which is a much smaller gun, to be honest. But in terms of light gun games, whilst the Super Nintendo had more, I think that the Sega Terminator 2 arcade game is like the best.
Imagine shooting the dog in Duck Hunt with that thing.
That would be cool. That would be overkill. But yes, he had that. And this is my Saturn virtual, I don't know what it's even called. It's a Saturn gun. I've got the box. I can't remember what it's called, but it's the virtual controller gun. And, you know, it's blue. So if you wanted to be an idiot and go in and threaten a bank, no one's going to shoot because they know it's a fake gun. But yeah, it's a really good gun. You've got a button here on the side for the Saturn. So for Virtua Cop 2, that's what I played for, and House of the Dead, and Area 51. They're like the three sort of main shooters. And there was a huge step up of light gun games with the Saturn era because a lot of great arcade ports that came to it. And back on the sort of NES, super like 16-bit, 8-bit light gun guns, there were more gallery shooters, if anything. Like something would pop up and you shoot it like lethal enforcers. They'd be like, yeah, you're never gonna get me, and he pulls out and you're shooting it and you just shoot back, sort of thing. Whereas when you get to like Virtua Cop, you've got 3D polygons and a lot more animation, a lot more going on. They really were light gun games. House of the Dead, you see the zombies coming at you. You got to really go reload, and it was that whole thing. And this is really the 32-bit era is where light gun games really took off, in my opinion. And Sega, if you're listening to this, which I know you're not, I'd love for you to make an accessory, maybe a Sinden light gun for a future Saturn Mini. That would work and have some light gun games on it. I don't buy an expensive accessory. That'd be cool. I think it would work. So, light guns, cool thing. So that's the Sega side of things. Then obviously the PlayStation came out just shortly after, and this is it, isn't it? This is the controller a lot of people.
The OG.
The OG. Okay. Now, obviously, I knew a lot of people that got the Saturn later on. They had these two sticks here. I thought you lucky gits, and they had these little analog sticks at the bottom that basically went there. And they were more for the 3D games, like when Spyro the Dragon and all that came out. And the Saturn was actually from the very beginning a 3D system. It was pitched as a 3D system to the point where I think the president of Sony Entertainment America, he actually said, "Hey, you got the analog stick one? Yeah, look, that's privilege. That is privilege." There we go. And you also got the button that turns the analog sticks on and off as well. That with the little light. I think that's what that was for. But this was fine for me. I was used to the D-pad control. Obviously, the D-pad's a little different with the Sony PlayStation. They're literally they're 4 buttons on a rocker underneath. We know what they are, but obviously they couldn't exactly copy Nintendo's D-pad design, so they did something different. Quite comfortable, actually, to be honest. A bit mushy, but yeah, you got just as intuitive a design as before. 4 shoulder buttons now, so you have a lot more options here. So as 32-bit games became a thing, 3D games became a thing, you got a lot more advanced input settings, a lot more detail in video games means you've got a lot more, what you can do. With the 3D environment, you have a button that can pan the camera left, one that can pan the camera right, one that can just open up your menu settings or whatever, or switch a gun if you're just to shoot them up. So you have all these other little buttons here. Also, you have these buttons here as well. So you got like reload the button, get another gun or whatever it is, or shoot or whatever it is, or back up the character. And you got the D-pad for other things as well. So you have a lot more input. You need a lot more inputs to 3D games. It's fundamentally as simple as
If
that.
I'm going to add something with the OG PS1 controller,
Yeah.
and this is coming from a RPG player.
Yeah.
The OG PS1 controller, especially playing with Sir Joel, notice playing it with Wild Arms 1, Blades and Blades, and Beyond the Beyond. It's okay, but once you got the the analog sticks, it's a lot better maneuverability wise.
Yeah.
Although in those older games, the analog sticks are not compatible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just sharing something that Viraj activated a memory on. Viraj, I challenge you to play this one then. The Turbo Touch 360 with a recessed D-pad and one solid thing. It doesn't have the doesn't have the arrows or something.
That just looks really gimmicky, and I would never buy it.
Yeah, I know, and I challenge you to play that one. Just just showing that.
It's good that so you had all these things that existed. You had all these accessories and input devices that existed. It's wonderful that other third parties wanted to try something else. So we got the PlayStation. We've just looked at. We looked at the Saturn as well, and different controls in the Saturn. And the PlayStation had the analog version controls, and there were obviously fight sticks for the Saturn as well. You had the Virtual controller as well, and then with the PlayStation, you had various fight sticks for that as well that came out. There's even, funny enough, there was even a Sega PlayStation controller that looked like a Sega Saturn controller. That existed. If I can find it, I'll throw it out there. But it works for the PlayStation. You've got it was weird. It felt so wrong. It looked like a Sega controller with a PlayStation badge on it. It's silly. But anyway, and the next step after that was there was this thing here. Let me just pull it out. This is my Nintendo 64 controller. And this is the one that gets a lot of hate as well. Like, okay, I understand where they were going. So it's a bit dirty because it's got some stains on it. Got some marks.
Very odd choice of a design, really. I mean, who designed this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Ultra
So
64.
Somebody with 3 hands.
So apparently, according to the meme, this is the gangbang controller apparently. So one for each hand, of course, and the middle goes for your mouse apparently, like this.
Yeah, I've seen that meme.
It's a gangbang controller. See, like that.
Well, I mean, somebody made a meme out. Man, I wish I had 3 hands from Total Recall because you kind of need it with these 3 spigots. So you got that. I don't want to ignore the comments here. So we got a comment here set by Jay saying, "I see where the Dreamcast."
Like, how do you like for example, if you're playing GoldenEye, right? Like, how do you even use it? Like, do you use it like this or this or this?
Right. So I'll touch on to why this controller was designed this way. We'll get there, but I just want to say, Jay, while you can see where the Dreamcast got its control inspiration from its older brother. So that Sega Saturn, this controller, you'll see the exact Dreamcast mold is there, and we'll get to that eventually. But with this, going back to the this thing, so the idea was you're not supposed to hold all 3. So if you've got a 2D game, all right, use the D-pad and you hold it like this, right? Because you don't need the analog stick. The analog stick was there for those who want to play games like GoldenEye. You got the 2 action buttons, you got the L and R, and you got the Z button there, but it's awkward because you haven't got access to this shoulder button. So I get that that's probably where it was there. And even Nintendo engineers said we didn't know how to make a Metroid game around this because the controller was so weird. We didn't have to do it. So you got the Z button here. So you've actually got an action button here to shoot with GoldenEye or whatever. So it's pretty cool. Under here you have a rumble pack you could put in there. So the rumble pack is something that Nintendo added with this. I don't know. I think the DualShock analog controller was something the vibration in was actually invented by Nintendo for this. I think the PlayStation 2, the vibration shock came from the PlayStation 2. You didn't have it with the PlayStation 1 analog controller. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, you had a lot of Nintendo fans will say, "Oh, Nintendo invented the analog stick." No, they didn't. They were probably known for having it on their first ever controller. But we have this on the Sega Saturn 3D controller. This is actually the first analog stick from from historical purposes. But this was actually the most widely known version of analog stick. It was there. It was fine. But you would have... my cousin did have drift issues with his. So these can drift out of place. But it was a controller that is either loved or really hated or disliked. And I don't think it's aged well with time. Obviously, the C buttons here were for camera angles and something. And they were trying to innovate 3D games, and I guess that with the first party stuff like Zelda Ocarina of Time, Marathon.
Like, how many directions do you need? Like, you got your D-pad up, down, left, right. You also got C up, C left, C down, C right.
The C's the camera angle. So I see where they were trying to go there to make the game more accessible. But
and then plus the analog stick. That's like 3 different directions right there.
Yeah. But okay, you got the rumble pack in it. Also, you had a linker cable here, so you could connect your Game Boy Color Pokemon to this and Pokemon Stadium, and you could connect with their handhelds, and that's what Nintendo started doing with the Nintendo 64 area. And you also had all sorts of things there. So there we go. So we've got Nintendo 64. So that's the 5th generation in a nutshell. Those are the Saturn, PlayStation, Nintendo 64. Lots of innovation there in rudimentary 3D. Directions. Then the next step was, and it's a bit of a cop out. It's the Sega Dreamcast controller we're going to get to because this came out in 98, 99 for the rest of the world, 98 in Japan. There we go. This is it. It needs a good clean, this one. But yeah, you can see where they went with the Saturn. I think Jay made a point about this in the chat. You got, it's basically like for like. The only difference is, and this is why I prefer the Saturn controller more, okay, because you've got more buttons on it. So they've actually gone backwards because, okay, you have the D-pad, okay. Oh, you got okay. So you got Sir Joe showing us his minimized version. You got an analog stick and a D-pad, right? Great. In fact, if you look at the D-pad on this, it's very basic. It's just a point, which is on a rocker, and you have this thing here, okay. So you've got the main sort of analog stick here. This thing, you got an analog stick here, which is a nice place for your thumb, and this one is a nice, much more comfortable D-pad. And you got 6 buttons on the face of it. 6. You only have 4 here. Like, what were you thinking, Sega? Why couldn't you go back to having a 6 button on your face? Like, why did you remove it? And why did you conform with everybody else by just having 4 action buttons? Why did you go with the PlayStation confirmation? Why did you go with A, B, X, and Y? Or that was like a Nintendo style thing, or go with the whole PlayStation thing. It's just silly. Like, they should have never have done that. They should have had the 6 buttons, and there were other controllers developed afterwards, but you had that, and you got the start button there, and you got the 2 shoulder buttons here, so you still got the same sort of butt cheeks here. I think what really makes the Dreamcast controller really special, I don't have one to hand. You had a VMU unit that would go in here. So let me pull this memory card out. So you got a memory card. So you have 2 memory card slots here in the controller. So you've got 2 slots, and you've got a VMU there. So this is where the memory card went. It was in the controller, which I thought was really, really strange, but it's there. And you also have the a little LCD screen that would go in here, and that you could, again, that was like kind of an extra accessory. It was a visual display memory unit, and you could play a little game on it. So if you had Sonic Adventure, you could have your little KO garden in there, and level up your KO or something.
Wait, my memory's a little confused. Are you sure the VMU doesn't fit on the top slot either?
No, it goes on the top slot. What I'm trying to say is, you can use both. But you can put it in the top slot as well.
Oh, there you go. That's it. Yeah, because that's what I do remember. Playing, I think was it Sonic, and you could bring the little thing, those little creatures along with you, like Tamagotchi.
With you, and you had a D-pad and a little 2 mini action buttons there. So it's like a little Game Boy unit you can play. A very, very basic, because it's LCD. There's LCD more than a Game Boy. Much
basically you've got a Tamagotchi along with you.
That's it, Tamagotchi. So it was an interesting time. If Sega do make a Dreamcast Mini, it'd be interesting how they work their way around that, if they are going to go around that. I think
the problem with the Dreamcast controller really is that it's just that the wire goes at the bottom.
Yes.
The Dreamcast controller. So what I have here is more of a so I got the version from Retro Fighters right here.
Yeah.
So basically, it's it's based from an Xbox controller, but rather than putting the wires coming from down here like the original Dreamcast, they put it here at the bottom, up here at the top, along with the VMUs, so that when you plug it in with your Dreamcast, it goes like normal, not like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Dreamcast does have its failings. It had a nice grip to it as a controller. I wish it had more action buttons. I wish it had 6 buttons, because it had some great Street Fighter ports. But why did they not have 6 buttons? You'd have to get the arcade stick to play those games. I think if Sega were going, you want to play arcade mode and play. And they had some great accessories, third-party accessories for Dreamcast. You had a keyboard as well, because it could connect to the internet. It was the first console that really was widely known to be the first online system for net play. Obviously, you could say Saturn was in Japan, but globally we played Dreamcast. So that was like the start of the 6th generation. People say, Dreamcast is 128-bit. It had a 128-bit GPU, but the bus was 64-bit. Was it really 128-bit? I don't want to get into that. But it was a wonderful system. And again, a much more polished 3D gaming system. And the graphics were superior to that of PlayStation 1. And there were some PlayStation 1 ports that looked better on Dreamcast. We're looking at Tomb Raider, Mortal Kombat 4, Mortal Kombat Gold, stuff like that. Was on the Dreamcast, but it also had its own games. Sonic Adventure, Crazy Taxi, Shenmue, or whatever. Some great games. Skies of Arcadia for those RPG lovers out there. So, but yeah, the controller complemented the system as well, like all the 3D systems out there. So there we go. So I think the next system was the PS2, and I think JDM has done a video for us since he has it. So it's
and speaking of Sir JDM, he has a few controllers of his own. So let's listen to Sir JDM and what are his controllers of choice.
Hi, Timeless Gamers. This is Juan DeMarcos, 123 Go Retro. Unfortunately, I can't come to the show today, but I'm going to show you some of my controllers that I use for gaming. And I'm sorry for the clutter here, guys. So these are the controllers that I use. This is ASCII ASCII, or however you pronounce it. It's an ASCII controller that I use for the PS1. I bought it a couple of years ago, and it has auto fire buttons which you can enable individually using these toggle switches right here, so you can cheat your way to Metal Gear Solid torture scene. Unfortunately, I believe this was released before the DualShock, so it doesn't have the analog sticks, but that's okay because back in the 90s we didn't really have we're not accustomed to the analog sticks yet. So here it is. I think everyone knows already what this is. This is the bigger brother of the PS1 controller, which is the DualShock 2 controller. And as you can see, we got some wear and tear here already. You see some cat hair. And this is one of the controllers that didn't have, it had the similar features or build with the first generation of the PS1. So maybe the designers think that it's a it's a perfect controller. You have the fine grip, you have the outstanding design, so why design another one, right? And also the main difference with the DualShock 2 controller is it has the pressure sensitive buttons, which is really useful if you're playing racing or racing simulation games, where you can just lightly press the buttons so you don't over revolution your cars, right? And it's also useful in other games. And here we have a generic arcade stick that I bought 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. And this is what do you call this? A Japanese type stick. It has the buttons. A good thing about this, even though it's a generic controller arcade stick, is that you can plug it in on a PS1, PS2, and you can also use this on a PS3 using the USB connector, and it indicates which controller, which port you are using with these LEDs. So this I use for playing arcade games, and you can even use this on the PC as well. But yeah, I also, believe it or not, I use this to finish the original Resident Evil 3 using the arcade stick, and I am subsequently playing Resident Evil 4 using this stick, but I haven't finished that gameplay yet. Maybe I could share a link to Sergio to showcase what I did with this arcade stick in Resident Evil. Okay, now I'm going to the light gun controllers. So this one is the original Japanese version of the Namco Guncon, which you can use to play light gun games. Unfortunately, you can't use this on a CRT monitor. You need to have a CRT TV to play light gun games with this, because the reason is that they don't have the same frequency, because the frequency of CRT monitor is 31 kilohertz or something like that, and the standard CRT TV is just 15 kilohertz. So there's a difference in the frequency, so you can't really use these light gun game controllers using a CRT monitor. As you can see here, this is my CRT TV. That's where I play light gun games. Well, it's not connected right now. This Namco Guncon is, you can only use this for the PS1, also in PS2 with some select games like Time Crisis 2, and you can't play this anymore with other games. It's not, you can play it, but it needs to have the D-pad of the Guncon 2 to play the PS2 light gun games, and that's where this comes in. So this is a third-party light gun that is modeled after the Guncon 2. As you can see, the difference is you have the D-pad here that you can use. For example, you're playing that Resident Evil light gun game for the PS2, which you need the directional controls to move the character. And what's good with this thing is that you can use it on different configurations. You can use it as a gun con. You can use it as a gun con too. And the Norcon, not sure what a Norcon is, but you can have at least three configurations that you can use. The buttons here, the A button, that's what you use when you try to reload or hide in cover. And this one is a feature, like a feature of this light gun controller is you can actually use a laser. You just toggle this switch and you can use a laser to aid you with aiming, and you can adjust the laser. It's in here, this one. You need to adjust it so it aligns perfectly, but the drawback is the laser reflects on the CRT screen. So whenever you aim it, the LED is returning back to you. So it's a ricocheting. So it's kind of annoying because it hits your eye and it makes you miss instead of be able to shoot properly. So that's it. So these are all the controllers that I have right now. So looking forward to get some other controllers. So now I'm going to talk about my wish list for game controllers. First one is the glove controller for the PS1, which I saw from a magazine back in the 90s. I opened up this magazine called EGM2, which is the offshoot version of the Electronic Gaming Monthly, or EGM. I saw this glove controls that fits in your hand, and you can actually use your hands. It's like a power glove actually. I've seen some demo videos and I really want to try that as a kid, so that's number one of my wish list. And the other one is that Resident Evil 4 chainsaw controller that you can use to play Resident Evil 4 for the PS2. But I think you can also use it in other PS2 games as long as you have configured it properly. But I don't think people are selling that. I think it's a very rare controller to have, so it's one of my holy grail for gaming related items. So that's it for me, guys. Juan DeMarcos here from 123Go, and I'll see you back in the next episode. Cheers.
All right, thank you for that, Sir JDM. And as a side note, this is the one that he is referring to, the chainsaw controller for the Resident Evil 4 for PS2 edition. That. So, yeah, I mean, it actually exists, really.
Yeah, I saw it in a shop in a glass case. The packaging around it, and a lot of wooden coffin packaging around it as well, which you don't see in this picture. I think I don't know if there's a GameCube one as well, or it was just for PS4. But it was there in that packaging, and I could have bought it all those years ago. I thought, who's really going to buy that? And in the end, I should have bought it because it's worth a lot of money now. It's such a collectible, and it was there at the game shop staring at me. But I just thought it was stupid. And to be honest, there are people who have played with it, and they say it's just an uncomfortable controller. It's a gimmick. It's so uncomfortable to play the game with. So you might be dodging a bullet there from a practical point of view. Actually, trying.
Can you even use the chainsaw part of it? Not really.
No, it doesn't. It's just plastic. It's not real.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's got a pull cord and it's got special functionality or anything. But yeah, it's
right.
there for a
would be cool
for somebody who has a special memory with the game and wants to have a little bit more contact with it. I guess.
Arguably, Resident Evil 4 is the best in the series. Arguably, the Cube.
I think so.
The Cube version one you play. I mean, it came on the PS2 afterwards. But you play the Cube version because the controllers are mapped for that game. The GameCube controllers are And speaking of GameCube, there we go. Well, I haven't even got. Let me get the controller out. The GameCube controller's there for it. Long old lead that I'm unraveling here. And
Thank
again,
you.
Just getting back for a moment, everybody's got a special control. Well, a wish list for a special controller.
Yeah.
And in JDM's case, it's the chainsaw one. For a lot of people, it's the new Deadpool or Wolverine one. Joe particularly wants the Cartana one.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
So I mean, this controller, you got one. So I really like this controller. I think it's a really good controller. I think, in my opinion, for that 6th generation, I know people will always say PS2 and PlayStation because arguably that is the most generic ergonomic controller out there. It's perfect in terms of the way that the blocks, the holder blocks hold. You rest your thumbs on it. This thing, I like it because, and this is why I like it over the PS2 analog controller. The analog stick is here, and at this point in time, a lot of the games were 3D, and 2D is like a preference that the D-pad is for 2D games, okay? But you've got it right here. With the PlayStation, the analog stick was here, and it was uncomfortable to play 3D games, in my opinion, on PS2. More comfortable on GameCube. Okay, the rumble was built into this device. You got your C stick. It's a stick now, not directional buttons like that we had on the N64 controller. So you got much more better control of cameras. You have a nice thick A action button. You got a B button here. You got your X and Y buttons here. Perfect for playing Smash Brothers. In fact, Nintendo bundled this with the special edition of Smash Brothers on the Switch. Would you believe it? They're still touting this controller because a lot of people just have such an affinity and comfort to it. You got your L and R buttons here. You got that. If you want to play Robert Sport, and you got your Z button there, your Z button there. If you want another special action, you got your start button there. It's a really comfortable controller. Very comfortable. I can't stress just how comfortable the GameCube controller was. Sadly, it wasn't a successful system. Sadly, it was not. But I can't fault the controller. I just found it a really comfortable controller to use. For that generation. I think, to be honest, this one. I just like this controller a lot for that generation. I know it's like the Dreamcast controller was nice as well, to be honest, in terms of the grip. To be honest, the Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, and this were my favorite controllers. But this gets the edge because of. It's not because it's comfortable. It's because I felt comfortable playing it with the games that were on the device. Yeah, Resident Evil 4, Mario Sunshine, Luigi's Mansion, Zelda: The Wind Waker. This is just such a good controller, and I think Nintendo just designed at this time. We're designing the games around the controllers better than all the other platforms. I think PlayStation 2 is a generic controller. It's comfortable and it ticked all the boxes, and I think it worked well generally with most of the games. But I can't just stress how comfortable it felt just playing with this controller and how the button just corresponded well with those games I played on. So for me, the GameCube was the best controller for the 6th generation. I think most people will say PS2. You're going to get those Dreamcast people saying, "No, Dreamcast was so comfortable as well." And you could argue that as well with the games that the Dreamcast was designed for. Crazy Taxi played wonderful on the Dreamcast. In fact, there were a lot of Dreamcast ports when Dreamcast went out, or Sega ports, I should say, but Dreamcast ports for GameCube and Xbox. Yeah, but I will say that those games played so much better on Dreamcast than it did on the Cube. So games like Skies of Arcadia Legend, it just felt more right playing it on the Dreamcast, etc. So again, we go into another territory talking about that, about ports, but the Cube was my favorite for that era. What do you guys think?
It's basically.
No, I mean with the
Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I mean, I'm just gonna say, I can understand why people love the overall design of the GameCube controller, because if you're gonna hold it, like your middle finger, your ring finger, and your pinky rest very well with the handle here. Your forefinger goes straight to the shoulder buttons, and your thumbs all the way to the face buttons, and it feels really comfortable on the hands. Really, ergonomic wise, it just sits very well, very well. Very well, very well.
A major contributing factor to the popularity of the N64 controller is Smash. A lot of people just keep playing that game, and even to modern day, with the modern Smash Bros on Switch, they default to the N64 controller. They actually bought adapters for the Switch for the original N64 controllers to play on the Switch. It's so much so that people started manufacturing and
Yeah.
64 type controllers for the Switch. So
yeah, everyone's got their favorite. I mean, I think the Cube is really the main one to go for, but some people wanted to go back.
sorry, and that's it. N64. I misspoke. The Cube. Sorry about that.
Cube
Yeah,
controller. It does
I
come.
misspoke. Sorry about that. Mhm.
Yeah, I was going to say. So
Well,
it's-
according to
sorry,
Sir Eric, the Intellivision controller is the way to go.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, cocaine is.
Hi, Sir Eric.
Hello, Eric Wahlberg. You know, looking forward to having you over again. And honestly, I kind of agree. The Intellivision is the best
Are
controller.
you people smoking ganja? Are you on magic mushrooms? No way. No
Or the
way.
ColecoVision. The ColecoVision had a really good controller too.
Remote control rubbish with a dial or something. You people are crazy. Eric.
No, but yeah, I misspoke about earlier. Not the N64. The GameCube. People default to that for Smash.
Yeah.
And
We can
even
Nintendo themselves created a special edition. Sadly, I haven't got it with me. It's in my cupboards upstairs, and it came with the GameCube controller to play with the Switch edition. And same with the Wii U edition. You know, there was a special one for that, and we'll get there. We'll get there eventually. So we have that on the Switch. Sorry, we have that. We will get that eventually on the Wii U and all that. But yeah, I think a lot of people have their preferences, and it's muscle memory. It's what you're used to in terms of how you want to play these games. And in all fairness, controller evolution doesn't need to happen when playing Smash Brothers because the game is fundamentally
honestly, if I can interject for Eric's benefit, if the Amico had come out, they would have been very comfortable controllers too. They looked like they were.
It was look like it was destined to flop anyway. So it's just
Yeah, I know, but you know, if it had come out, if you have a look at the Amico controllers, they look like they were gonna be good. It's just too bad it never happened.
It's a cheap knockoff of what Nintendo.
I know, yeah, but in television properties, they were really, really good. And Astro Smash, I would have played that, you know, like crazy. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I've just gone away to get another controller. So I think after GameCube, on the Nintendo side of things, we had the Nintendo Wii.
Of course, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this
The
is obviously
nunchuck controller.
It's a white controller. My brother had the white one. Sadly, back then somebody burglarized my parents' home and they stole my brother's Wii.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
It was over 10 years ago, and I said, "Don't worry, I'll get a Wii U to replace it," because the Wii U were coming out by then. And again, the Wii actually had a motion controller, and they tried something different. And a Wii is basically, you know, it's a souped-up GameCube. That's all it is. They didn't do much with it, you know. But anyway, so you got the motion controller, and they did the Wii Motion Plus adapter as well to make it more sensitive. You could actually stuck it on the bottom of your original one, and then they just redesigned the controller and have it built in inside. And that's what this is, the Model 2 Wii Motion Plus one, and it's black because my Wii U is black, so it goes with my Wii. But it's for the Wii. It work on the Wii fine. And you have this little tadpole here they call a nunchuck. So you got the the C button here that probably centers your character. You got a trigger button here, and you also have a 3D analog stick here. If you don't want to play it with this, you can unclip it and just play it as a normal controller like this. But I wouldn't say it's the most comfortable controller to play two-player games with. And again, actually beat New Super Mario Brothers on the Wii with this, and it was fine. But I knew I should have probably got the Pro controller.
It's a very stupid controller to play with. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Nitpick. If you're an RPG player like me, okay, you better get yourself one of these. All right.
That's the one.
Right.
I was talking about. That's the one you should.
So either your Wii is the version 1 where you can use the GameCube controller. That's fine. But if not, better get one of these. All right. Like, so for example, if you are playing Ark Rise Fantasia, Last Story, Crystal Chronicles, Pandora's Tower, Fire Emblem, Tales of Symphonia, yeah, you better get one of these because it's very stupid of you. If you're gonna play with the nunchucks and the Wiimote at the same time,
yeah,
it's very weird. Very weird.
Is that wireless?
No, it's the cord one.
Okay, fair enough. This is wireless. Okay, and if you've got a big TV, you want to be sitting away. You want a wireless solution, but I'm sure they had wireless controllers for this thing at the time. I just don't have any to hand. And wireless technology, as TV size has got bigger and bigger, you want to be away from the TV. Like, you can't just have a longer cord. It just got silly in the end. See, at this time,
no. I'm not saying. I'm not saying that. I'm only saying if you're playing straight up RPG games, and if you're playing like very interactive sport games, yeah, of course, use the Wiimote by all means. You are free to do so. They are meant to be used like the Wiimote is used
Yeah.
intentionally for those kind of games. But for RPG players, the nunchucks and the Wiimote, nah.
Mm. So obviously that was the Wii system that everyone knows about that. It's pointless me going on about that, to be honest. I think most people know that this was the wireless solution. This was their controller, and it was designed around Wii Sports. And let's be honest here, the Wii did well because it was Wii Sports that sold it. It was the game that came in there that old people like Sir Joel here wanted to buy because they're too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. Mark my words. There will come a time when nursing homes will have Wii's in their living room areas for people to have.
It's an amazing way for older generations to play bowling and golf.
Absolutely. Mark my words. All those old Wii's sitting around, they're going to be valuable in the future because old folks' homes are going to buy them en masse.
And it's a system that works well. So again, a lovely little controller, wireless controller. Obviously now the Nintendo forced that on you. Now at this point, it's become a rudimentary thing with the seventh generation or sixth generation controller. So you got that for Nintendo side of things.
And mark my words, once my daughter throws me into the old folks home, I'm going to establish an old folks gaming league. That's it. using Wii games.
For the benefit of those who are listening, so the controller that I'm holding it's basically an add-on to the Wiimote. Okay,
yes.
So the controller that I'm holding here is that if you don't want to use a nunchuck, so Nintendo came up with a basic controller that you plug into the Wiimote. This controller here has a D-pad, 2 analog sticks, X, Y, A, B button, select, start, home button, shoulder buttons, Z, ZL, ZR, L and R buttons. However, this plugs straight to the Wiimote. It doesn't work if you just it doesn't have a slot on the Wii console itself. So for you to use this controller, you need the Wiimote still.
Yeah, so it's still plugged into this, and this is the power source, and this is the receiver at the end that will connect to the Wii. So you have that, and also Wii U as well, and we'll get to the Wii U as well. And this is an interesting direction Nintendo went into. There we go. This is the Wii U game. We still have yet to cover the Wii U on this channel, but this system has a very special place in the heart. Same place that the Saturn has, I should say, because this is Nintendo's failure, really.
That's the Switch prototype. There you go. I'm just putting it out there.
It was the Kickstarter to the Switch, and I paid stupid money for this when it came out. It was £370. I paid for it. It was a deluxe set, and it came with it. I'll show you the Switch Pro, the Wii U Pro controller I got with it as well. Now, this is the controller fundamentally, the Wii U main pad, and you got a touch screen here, okay, and it offered a dual screen element of gaming, so you could, like the Nintendo DS, you could play games on this thing, you could touch into it. You have a camera here as well, so you got a nice bit of kit there. You also have a microphone built into it. You also have speakers built into the controller. This is the charging socket. So you've got speakers here. You have your D-pad there, and you've got the action buttons, and you've got these 2 analog sticks. It vibrates. It's got a shock on there as well. It's got a rumble built into it. It does feel like a toy. That's what a lot of people criticize. That it's very plasticky, but it's lasted. It's built really well. It's actually a very well-made controller. You break this controller, you're pretty much screwed with the Wii U, to be honest. It's the other half of the Wii U. You need this controller. It's part of it. One thing I loved about it, back then I lived with my folks, and say if my dad or mum wanted to watch something, I could transfer the game and play it here and plug my headphones in and play the games using this screen. So that was pretty cool. I could do that.
Actually, I'm going to say to Sir Joel because I played and finished Tokyo Mirage sessions for the Wii U, and you would think that it feels weird using that bulky gamepad really as your main controller. But surprisingly, I didn't really mind it at all. Like for the majority of the gameplay, it feels like just a normal controller to me. Really.
I can imagine. I mean, it looks like it's got good heft. It looks like it's got good ergonomics. The button placement seemed to be really good, so I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all.
Infrared, you can sync it. You got the everything there. You've even got a stylus here as well. Look, you can pull it out and you can play with the touchscreen games. You have a volume slider here for the unit, so it's basically like a handheld system that does.
It's just too bad it's not easy to mod. It's just too bad it's not very easy to mod, from
It
what
is.
I recall.
It is. The
Oh, it
actually
is.
It is.
around the Wii U is.
It is.
In fact, you can
Well,
you can
like
this
10 years, like 10 years ago, maybe, but
Yeah,
now it's
way
easier.
back in the day, I remember
Yeah.
I researched it and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be
Oh, you
hard to
can
mod.
basically
It
my
was
friend
very tricky to mod at the time. Yeah.
he's modded his Wii U, so he's got GameCube or the entire GameCube library on there, the Wii library on there, and the Wii U library on there. The
Hmm.
entire one. He's got 3 different hard drives that click to the USB unit of the Wii U. But we'll cover this
And
more.
the mod extends to the controller as well, like the things that you can do with it.
Yeah,
Things
yeah.
that
You can actually play Nintendo DS games on a Wii
Mm-hmm.
U by modding it, and you can actually have this is the lower screen and that is the higher screen. Play Mario
Oh,
Kart.
that's
It's a
interesting.
higher resolution than the DS. That's how crazy it is. It's actually really
Hmm.
well done. So
I
The
might actually
one thing
consider
that I
having
can
having to get one now.
perhaps a nitpick that I can probably add with the gamepad. Sarvachi will probably know this more than I do. It's like it's like the iteration of the PlayStation Portal. Like you need to be at least 5 meters away from the console itself because it uses infrared
I
for the
see.
for the
Okay.
for the for the console to recognize the signal coming from the gamepad. You need to be at least 5 meters away. If you go
Mhm.
beyond that, it just stays blank.
I see.
So
Okay.
yeah, you got a range there. You do have a range. So if you leave the room, like one time is really not nasty of me saying this, but one time I was like, I need to go to the toilet, but I want to play the game still. So I transferred the game to the handset and I went to the toilet to try and play it. But then the signal, as soon as I closed the toilet door, which was close to the room, the signal went. So you have to be in the same room. So the handheld signal is only maybe 15 meters tops. So you can't do that. And I've never had any issues with being too
And
close.
that's why mobile gaming will always be superior. You can game on the toilet. There you go.
Game in the toilet.
This was me back in the day, but I wash my hands all right. Okay, I wash my hands. But anyway, so
Of course. Who doesn't?
well, fuck you with that.
Wink, wink.
But
Of
you have
course.
this controller as well for the Wii U, the Pro controller. I love this controller.
Yep.
This came with my deluxe edition. That's why it was so much money on release. And again, Rumble features. It's a much more smaller controller. You got your L and R, and you got your action buttons here. It's basically this. All the button features on this, apart from the screen, is on this basically. And again, it's something that my brother and I would play games together on very briefly. He wasn't. I think at that point he sort of grown away from these sort of games, but I still love this. It was a secondary control pad. It was something I used when on the Nintendo we used Virtual Console to play retro games. So Star Fox 64, I downloaded it, and this was the controller I used for it. Much better than the 64 controller. So this is actually a really good controller, and you can actually mod this to play on a Switch now. So this can
If I'm going to add something about the Wii U Pro controller to those people who are listening, guys, you really don't need it. Actually, it's not really a necessity. If you're the type of person who feels weirded out with the bulky gamepad, by all means, get the Pro controller. But for the majority of the Wii U games, you don't really need that thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. It doesn't have the sorry. One thing that I forgot to mention. It doesn't have. I don't think it has a rumble feature built in. I told a lie there. I don't think it has a rumble feature. It was actually the Switch Pro controller that does. This one doesn't. But it's still a very comfortable controller, and I'm glad that I had it. You don't need it. I mean, you got
Just for those people who don't like using the gamepad.
Yeah, but this came in the special set, and it was a secondary controller that I wanted to have because my brother was going to play with me. That's it. And also obviously got the Wii Wiimotes that also work with the Wii U. So
You know what, Sir Joel? Actually, the Wii U Pro controller, it's quite expensive, even the used ones, because we have it here in our CAX. They usually sell for 80 to 100 Australian dollars, and I'm like, why? What for?
Dang, why? Is
it's
it?
collectible, isn't it?
I mean, for something like that, like what for? Because because I thought that I researched Tokyo Mirage Sessions if it's going to be more advantageous if I use the Pro controller, and according to the chat rooms, no, it's not really necessary. Really, just use the gamepad. You're good. It's just another clutter in your collection. If you're the type of person who just collects for the sake of collection's sake, sure. But if you're just playing for the sake of playing, you don't really need it.
I see. Okay.
So going the next step Nintendo did. I'm going to be honest. I know I've ignored the Sony and Microsoft side of things, and we can touch on that afterwards, because there hasn't really been that much control evolution, in my opinion, from PS3, PS4, maybe PS5 if you got one. We'll talk about that at the end. But this is a Switch. This was the what the direction they went into this, and they went with the Joy-Cons, and they slot onto the side of the Switch. You know this, right? But obviously, this is one that's going to be heavily criticized by me. It's too small. Okay, we have drift issues. It's known to have drift issues. Nintendo hid away from this. They got taken to court, and they've had to fix all the issues. And yeah, you got an issue with this, you take up with Nintendo, and they should give you a new one. Legally, they have to now, because they lost the case and they know that there's something wrong with this. Great controller when it works. I actually enjoy playing Fortnite on this.
If it works.
Great controller when it works, but they do get drift issues. This is my second set since, so I've got these now. But I don't like playing with these anymore because I'm so scared I'll get.
But there's no, because that's the thing. Even if you buy a second set, third set, fourth set, there's no guarantee that you won't get any drift.
Yeah.
No, and that's the reason why I've been doing nothing but buying third-party controllers for the Switch. Honestly, I go to Five Below, I get a pair for $15. If I break them, I get another pair for $15. That's it. The Five Below is a cheap dollar store place here in the US.
I found out
just skip the original and use a third-party one.
Really. Exactly. Yes.
Or if you're like me and you have a screwdriver, you can unscrew it and then pull out the thing and then clean.
All right, Joe, say the line. Say the line. Come on, ain't nobody got time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, exactly.
But one thing I will say is this is the controller. This is the one for Nintendo Switch. There are different versions of this. It's a Zelda. There's so many different themes, but this is the Switch Pro controller. My brother bought two of these. He's given me this. This is his one. He's very kind enough to gift this to me because he doesn't use it anymore for the second player. But he loved the Switch when it first came out. He played a lot of two-player. You got an analog stick in the right condition. You got a lovely D-pad here. You got another analog stick there. Great. You got two sticks here. You got you got action buttons here, and you got two sets of shoulder buttons. It is
another controller that Nintendo pulled out that you don't really need it.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. This is a good controller.
No, you don't.
You do. What's better than this? What is better than this on the Switch?
The GameCube controller.
No, this is the best controller. I'll be honest with you. It's so.
Sure. Sure. Just to resolve the drifting issues, they have to resort of pulling out controller just like that.
Well, not drifting issues. If you look at the Joy-Cons, they're tiny. They're for children. Look at the little stick on this. It's tiny.
They tried to make it a compromise between a Wii controller and an actual handheld controller because of the fact that it had motion controls and gyros and everything like that. I guess that's the sole advantage of it.
No, that's the thing for Joel, because basically they're gonna give up the gimmick for the sake of functionality.
Yes.
So what's the point of releasing the Joy-Con controllers if they're gonna pull out something like that anyway?
Precisely. Yes.
That's the whole gimmick of the Switch, the Joy-Cons itself. However, because of the drifting issues that Nintendo themselves don't know what the hell's going on, they have to pull up something like that.
I mean, this was something this is something they released with the Switch when it came out. It wasn't something that they pulled off afterwards, to be fair to Nintendo. The Joy-Cons, they have an exclusive feature on them with the motion controls. And games like Mario Odyssey, you need the Joy-Cons to play. I mean, you can't play it with this. So if you want to throw his hat...
and let's not forget the whatchamacallit, the Amiibo functionality too, right?
Yeah, so you have Amiibo functionality on both of these, to be honest. And they can sit on there. And then on the Wii, to be honest, one thing I forgot to mention on the Wii U is you have the Amiibo functionality on this. This is when it was introduced. You put the little pad there and you got it there. So it was introduced with the Wii U with the little Amiibos. And if you want to go down that gimmick, and also with the 3DS, the Amiibo function was built into the new 3DSs. You had to have a special adapter for the old 3DS designs. I
only bought Amiibos particularly for the characters that I had a special affinity for, like Little Mac.
I was,
as
an accessory, I was gifted this, and for those who don't know what an Amiibo is, here it is. I'm holding a Mario 30th anniversary Amiibo here.
Yes, that one. I have that one too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the idea is you put it on here and you get special features in a video game, or you might get some special outfit in a Mario game that's there. But there's all sorts of things with Amiibo. But okay, Nintendo have gone in this direction, and the crazy thing is, we can complain about the controllers, but this has become the second most popular video game selling system of all time. Not because of the controllers, because the software on it is just sheer there. It's a handheld that works as a console. It's accessible. It's cheap to develop for. And it has everything for everyone more or less. The only thing that's weak about it is the controllers and the graphics. Yeah,
Yes.
what you get
Honestly, the Switch
Get
ports are
integrated.
horrendous compared to the other platforms.
yeah, for AAA titles, they are not as good graphically looking. I won't say horrendous. Like Sonic Frontiers, I think it looks fine. And in fact, because it has lower graphics, when you're running to the distance and playing Sonic, it appears quicker. Whereas with the PlayStation port, it takes so long for the background to appear because more graphics, more memory, and it takes a bit longer. So I think actually the Switch one was actually the actual game, but then they made an enhanced version for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox versions afterwards. So it depends on how the games are developed. But we all know Mortal Kombat 1 was a disgrace on the Switch. And I think that's where we're going with this. The Switch is showing its age now, and Nintendo are going to release a new system next year. It better have some 4K.
Oh wait, so the Switch is like what, native 720p, but if you put it on a television, it goes 1080p.
Full HD, no, it's full HD on a TV, 60 frames a second. Okay, but on the actual the unit itself, it's 720p, and it doesn't have
720p native.
So when you're playing Zelda Breath of the Wild, you notice there's a bit of lag. When a lot of enemies come, you notice the lag. But when it's on the TV, that goes away.
No, I mean that's the thing, because with our technology right now and how things are progressing visually, you cannot really go back to 720p really.
No.
I mean 1080p is 1080p right now is the basic minimum really.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's a plug-and-play mini console that's 16-bit, yes, you need it to be 720p. Anything bigger will make it look really bad. And in all fairness, the TVs all have processors now that know how to put the right resolution and make it look good, even on a 4K set, to be fair to it. So 720p isn't terrible, but it depends on the format that you're playing on it. Newer games, we're talking AAA titles, it should be 4K. 1080p is still a good standard, but 4K is the way things should be. And Nintendo should.
If you're playing 2D games, sure, 720p looks magnificent still. But 3D rendered games, nah.
All right. So let's move on to the other section. Unless there's, do you guys have any other controllers that you two might want to show? Because I haven't got any PlayStation 3, PS4, PS5 controllers to show.
We can go. We haven't gone with Xbox yet.
Yeah, we haven't gone to Xbox. So we did show. So Joel did show us an original Xbox controller.
I did show the Duke controller, and I don't own a. Let me just turn off my my virtual background because it is interfering with the visuals. I don't own a 360 controller, but I do have a third-party 360 controller because number one, I prefer wired when it comes to my controller sometimes because I don't, charging the battery, ain't nobody got time for that,
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, exactly. Ain't nobody got time for that. But the 360 controller is a very, very comfortable layout. It's offset thumbstick here, a D-pad right here. You can easily switch between them. The menu button is right here, and of course the buttons are very comfortably placed, color differentiated as well, and the shoulder buttons are extremely comfortable. But the evolution of that is the Xbox One, Xbox Series controller, which has much more comfortable, much more comfortable trigger buttons here. They're designed so that your fingers rest really, really well on them. And it is a very good evolution to it. This is the Xbox One version. The Xbox Series X controller has it much like the old Sega Genesis one, an integrated one where it's more rounded and basically that. So this is, personally speaking, comfort-wise, it's really, really comfortable for modern day gaming. And overall, the PlayStation one, the most recent one, the PS5 one, is pretty good too. But pound for pound, I'd say between that and this one, this feels like it's much more comfortable in the hand for long gaming sessions, especially if you want to do Civ 6 on the Xbox. You want to do that, this is the way to go. Or long sessions of Kingdom Come Deliverance if you're immersed in killing barbarians in Bohemia. This is the way to go. So Kurt has something here. My issue with Xbox 360 controllers, it's bad for fighting games. The diagonals don't register really well on their D-pads.
They are.
respect,
They
yeah,
are really.
yeah.
I try
In
to
that
see
respect,
fighting games. They are.
in that respect, yeah, definitely. You get yourself an arcade stick for
Yeah.
fighting it, definitely. And there are a ton of good fighting game sticks here, for the 360, for the Xbox.
Yeah, I mean, I
Ori came out with a
that's
good
another
one.
option.
Mhm.
But I think Kurt does have a valid point here, which is why
Mhm.
make a controller where you don't make a D-pad that's as good as the
That's
analog?
true. That's true. Yeah.
No excuse for that. And
Mhm.
I agree. If you're going to have a controller, and you got to spend, these controllers are expensive now. They've got a lot of features in them. Get all the features right because we want to get good value for money. Like Nintendo, like one thing I will say about them, I know you say you don't need this and all that, but this actually works really well with 2D games and 3D games. They got that right. Okay, you can complain about price because that's the only thing you're going to complain about. Fair enough. But as a controller, it's really good. Actually, all of them are good apart from the Joy-Cons. They can go in hell. They can burn in hell. So there's that.
I got something here.
Yeah.
So speaking of Xbox, here's one. What I got here is the OG Xbox Mortal Kombat Fatality Controller with a K.
Wow.
Badass.
And you got
Nothing
6
says
buttons.
controller with
Yes,
a K.
nice.
Goddamn it.
Oh, those
This is
6
the
button controls.
Sub-Zero variant
Yeah.
for the OG Xbox.
And you
Alright?
got 6 buttons.
I haven't
on it,
really
so,
tried it yet though.
yeah.
It's still in it's still in box.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, it's a shame. All these controllers have 4-button face buttons now, really. And
Yeah.
let's go to the section which I call other controllers. So I do have some others here that I want to show you. So this is a friend of mine. This is the
If there's one nitpick that I'm gonna say about the OG Xbox controller, the first iteration was very very bulky. Number one,
Yeah.
and number two, they tend to use that like that extension plug. That if you tend to lose that, you're screwed. Like you cannot even you cannot connect that to your Xbox OG console.
it's done, yeah.
I mean, that's it's detachable, and I'm like, why even they even consider using that one?
Yeah, it baffled me because I remember when selling the Xbox all those years ago.
I'm not sure what do they call that. That
I don't even remember. It was what 2000 and
controller.
Yeah, 2001, 2003. Yeah, you're about to say Viraj about selling it.
Yeah, when I remember setting it up on display, my manager goes, "All right, Viraj, you're responsible for gaming. Can you set this Xbox up, put it on display?" And I remember putting it there, and I was like, "Why does the controller have this? What is this?" And I thought this is stupid. Like, why don't you just keep it as one lead like PlayStation 2 have or GameCube have? And in the end, he goes, "Look, you got to take the GameCube off display." It's not selling.
There you go. It's called the breakaway cable. There you go.
Breakaway
the
cable.
Xbox breakaway cable.
And an app name for it too. It's the right name because it broke away all the time. It's stupid. All these people trying to nick it as well, like on display. People trying to steal the controller. Did my head in. So it's bad. I had to put a tag on it, and it's got all these sticky marks on it. Whoever bought the display, you got sticky marks, and you had to clean it. But anyway, so that's the Xbox controller in a nutshell. They have evolved and they've gotten better and better. Same with the PlayStation. Sadly, we don't have a PS4, so the PS4 had the little touch thing.
Yeah, I've got a PS4 here.
Have a look. PS4. Because the PS3 was basically the same as the PS2 with the 6-axis controller, and they got sued for that anyway because they stole the design or something. But the PS4 was the next big jump, really, from the PS3, and there we go. So yeah.
So the only thing that they added with the PS4 controller is the touchpad interface. But I'm not even sure what games use this one.
Yeah.
Maybe Uncharted, but that's all I can think of.
I think
there was one. Tearaway. Tearaway used that one pretty well. Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean because when they announced this during E3, they really harped on the functionality of the touchpad interface right here in the middle.
Yeah, Tearaway used that pretty well on the PlayStation 4, but Tearaway is a port from a Vita game, and that it was much better on the PlayStation Vita.
Let's go through this with PlayStation design very quickly. So we had the PS1, okay, and that was great, and then they introduced the analog switches on there. Then with PS2, you had the analog with dual shocks. You had a shock in there with the PS2 controller. And then with PS3, you had something called a 6-axis controller, which had a gyro sensor.
The PS2 third party here.
There we go.
From Mad Cats.
The Mad Cats.
Yeah, for the PS2, yeah. So it has a turbo, analog, and digital option right here at the center.
Yeah, great.
Very heavy, very heavy, but with leather grips.
Yeah,
I like it.
Mad Catz did make some great controllers back in the day. It's a shame that they ain't around anymore. I think they made the best third-party controllers, if I'm being honest, for the time. But where was I? PS3, we had the 6-axis, didn't we? And that was basically, it had a gyro sensor in that controller, didn't it? And that's the only difference between the 2 and the PlayStation. And obviously 3 was just, so the PlayStation 4 we just looked at with a touch sensor. And the PlayStation 5, everybody's seen that. That looks futuristic. It's a step in the right direction. Haptic feedback, a lot more inputs in there. I think it's got a mic built in and all sorts of weird things in there. So it's actually, in my opinion, when I played with the PS5 controller for the first time, it's actually a really good controller. So I think that's actually probably the best controller, the PS5 controller right now that exists for it. It's actually very close, in my opinion, to the Switch Pro controller. I think that actually PS5 is probably better than this, actually, functionality-wise. But in terms of the feel, it's actually a really nice controller. So that's your Microsoft and Sony's and where we're at right now. But yeah, so I was going to talk about this controller as well. So this is this other controller. So this is an 8-bit Do M30 2.4 gigahertz wireless controller. This is for the Mega Drive Mini because you've got a USB stick that's 2.4 gigahertz. It'll work on your PC as well. It's not just for the Mega Drive Mini, but it's a lovely little unit. A lot more comfortable than the Retrobit one that I have. I have to say it's got a nice big heft to it, a nice good D-pad to it. This is obviously the Retrobit one I showed earlier. But yeah, I think a lot of people like this particular controller, and this is just another controller. That's another way to play it. In fact, I need to find a way how to get this to work on a Mega Drive Mini once I've hacked it, because sadly, only the Retrobit one works with RetroArch. I haven't managed to get this to work with RetroArch. It does work with RetroArch. I just need to find a way around it. So it's that. Another controller. Now, this is a controller I did a lot of gaming with. Now, we talk about PC gaming, okay? And everyone talks about a mouse and a keyboard, but there are a lot of PC games which required a controller. And this is my cheap PC line tournament. As you can see, it's modeled after a PlayStation 1 design. And this is something I got in the early 2000s. It's a cheap way to play my emulated games on my PC. A USB plug that went in there. It was cheap, but it's a good little controller for what it is. It's not the best in the world, but it did the job. All right. So even when I was on a low salary, you can get cheap computers for PC and emulate that way. But it does feel wrong playing a Mega Drive game with, a 4-button typeface. It's more of a SNES PlayStation. You've got the two sort of things there if you want to play that way. So you have that. Other devices that I've got other than consoles are mini consoles and mini arcades. And I just want to throw this is very colourful. This is my Sega Astro City Mini controller pad. Concave buttons for arcade inputs. You've got a start and a credit button. You have a lovely rock. A lovely rock on the D-pad. Probably the most comfortable D-pad I've ever got. So this is nice. These are quite expensive now, actually. Lovely design. Again, you've got butt cheeks you can grip onto when playing these arcade games. Very comfortable 6-button controller. And it will work for the Astro City Mini, Astro City Mini V, and the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2 or Genesis Mini 2 is compatible with those two. I think you can get it to work on.
So that's a base. So it kind of look. So it looks like the layout with the Sega arcade games. Sega arcade cabinets.
Yeah, that's correct. So let me just show you this. This is a real treat for you guys because very few people got this, and they only had 2 batches of this when it came out. This is an arcade stick for the Astro City Mini. I was crazy enough to buy one. It was about half as expensive as a unit, or just as expensive. It's heavy, all right?
Holy shit. Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful stick. I know Sega made one of these for the Dreamcast as well, and you actually had a VMU window you could put in there. I see people with their versions. I know there was a Sega Saturn version of this design as well. This was their design for their arcade style. This is obviously the newest one they've made for the Astro City Mini. Beautiful stick. This is made with Sanwa parts. Yeah, it's a square gate with micro switches, Sanwa buttons. It's got a weight to it, man. It is built up. It's metal under there. So this is a really quality made unit. I spend a lot of evenings, playing this rest here. A lot of evenings playing Space Harrier or whatever it is I want to play on this thing. Virtua Fighter is actually what the stick was mapped around. So a lovely, lovely little stick for it. It'll work on PC as well, obviously. But I got that for the Astro City Mini. Shortly after that, they had released, obviously, the Mega Drive Mini 2. And the premium accessory for that was this thing. I'll show it to you. And this is another lovely little input device, a lovely little stick set. It's called a Cyber Stick, and I got this from Japan. And again, it's a USB out, and it's a great little device if you want to play Afterburner 2. Now, this plugs into the second controller socket of your Genesis Mini 2 or Mega Drive Mini 2. It's also compatible with the Taito Egret 2 Mini, which is another mini consoles. Taito made a mini arcade.
Really?
Yeah.
We're gonna use that for Afterburner? Do you really need all of that?
Right. So I'll tell you how it works. Yeah. So you got this thing here. This controls your jet, your F-14 Tomcat. So you have the main stick. So this controls the direction. You got a button here for missiles, a button here for shooting your Vulcan cannon. You have an auto fire switch where my thumb is. We can control it all there. You have this is for the throttle. This is for the speed of the ship. Yeah. So if you want to go fast or slow, you can slow it down. So a much more intuitive control system than buttons. So if you can go fast, you go fast, and you can go there and you can shoot. You can slow down as well. This is the best way to play Afterburner. You know, I kept telling Sodan, you need to get one of these for the Mega Drive Mini 2. He's like, no, I can't be bothered with this. But yes, it was expensive for me to buy, but it plays brilliantly. Another thing as well is you can play Space Harrier with just this controller and just shoot there.
Let me guess. Inverted controls.
You can switch it. So for special needs people like you, with your special needs, you see where here it says reverse and normal. You got loads of switches, so you can switch it.
See, guys, reverse and normal. Because it's abnormal to play it in.
It's an all thing. You can choose to have it like that or like this. So people like you. Also, another great thing is for left-handed people, you can actually turn the dials off here, move this here, and move that here. So some people prefer playing with
for left-handed people.
Yeah. So
for left-handed guys. Yeah.
You can do that. You have A, B, and C buttons. Again, you have trigger speeds as well. You have all sorts of notches on here: auto fire, manual fire, all sorts of things. Digital, analog control. What do you want? This is a great piece of hardware for people who are serious about enjoying a game. That's what it's for. And it was designed originally for the Sharp X68000, which was a computer back in those days. And what people would do back then is they'd get this device, hardwire it, and put this, and basically take this off and put a 9-pin connector and put it on their Mega Drives, and it would work in Japan. So Sega actually made this as an accessory for a Mega Drive Mini 2 because they knew so many people wanted to play this with Afterburner, and it was available for them to do it. Great little device.
It's specifically designed for people like me who likes to play with normal controls when flight simulation games.
I can't stress enough that this is such an immersive. The reason we play video games is to be immersed into this fantasy, to really enjoy the experience. This is an immersion tool. Half of the video game is how you interact with it, and this is such a great controller to use. You know, it's the best controller for that game. And if you want to have the ultimate experience of playing super scalar games like Afterburner or Space Harrier or Night Strikers by Taito, this is a brilliant controller for it. I know it's a bit pricey, it's over £100, but there we go. It's one of those things that I really love, and it sits here on my table. I never put it away because there are days where, you know, when Top Gun Maverick came out, I wanted to play Afterburner 2 again for obvious reasons.
Oh yeah, sure, like Top Gun, okay.
Yeah, so that's you have that. So there's a Cyber Stick, and that's also compatible with the Taito Egret 2 Mini, which is a mini console we haven't covered yet. Maybe one day we will. But I do have the accessories for that. So I have the controller for that Taito Egret 2 Mini, which is here. I don't particularly like this. The Astro City Mini controller works on the Taito Egret 2 Mini. You have 3 menu buttons. Only one menu button won't work, but it's not imperative. You still play the game with that other controller. Concave buttons, a D-pad, but it's very stiff compared to the Astro City Mini one. The membrane is not good. You've got butt cheeks on it. It's all right as a controller goes, but nothing special. It's just if you want to have it matching with the mini console, and that's the reason I bought it. So that's that. I actually have another arcade stick for that Mini as well, which is this thing here. There we go. So not as big as that big Astro City Mini one. Heavy is what it is. We've got sticks here. Pretty cool. 3 menu buttons. one thing I like about this is this thing here underneath it, which is you have a little switch here, and you can switch it to be a four-way control system, like a cross. So that actually affects it. So it'll only go in four directions otherwise. So if you're playing a game like, I don't know, Space Invaders, which is also on the Taito Egret 2 Mini, you literally have a cross stick, and that's all you need. You don't need the controller going in some weird direction and not inputting properly. So for much more primitive games, you have the four-way control stick, or if you want, you can switch it back out, and it will pop back out again, and you have eight-way control section on the round gate stick that you have there. So again, a very, very nice control arcade stick. Not too big like Maestro City Mini. Quite comfortable. Has a USB socket, so it'll work on PC as well. So you have that too. Now, this is a very interesting one. And I think you'll like this one, Sir Joe. And this is the last controller for my Egret 2 Mini, which is this thing. And this has a trackball and a paddle. So it's the paddle we talked about. So there are certain games like bowling games or breakout type games or Camel Tree. I think that's one of the games there where you control a maze and a ball is going through. You have this. So again, a really fun, intuitive way to play games. And obviously there's action buttons on either side. So you have this thing. And again, for the Taito Egret 2 Mini. So there we go. It's so wonderful that for a mini arcade, they've offered the buyer a solution to choose what controllers you want. And if you want to buy more, you can buy more and be crazy like me. But realistically speaking, most people just go for the 6-button controllers. Just the last two controllers I want to show. This baby one, tiny little thing, is a 1943 controller. Tiny thing. It's for a mini arcade, the 1942 New Wave Toys Replicade. And again, it's just basically a small little controller, connects via USB Type A Mini, and you can control. You've got these two little switches here, but again, it replicates the arcade feel in your home, and it's a bit arcade ROM playing in that. So a nice little clicky controller. That's a microcontroller, quite comfortable in your hands. Again, you've got the little back pop there, so this is quite nice actually for what it is. So you have that. And another arcade stick, and this last one.
Well, I have to challenge Viraj on something. Let me see if I can bring that up. Let's see. I want Viraj to show us that he has this controller.
Oh no!
The Steel Battalion controller for the original Xbox. There you go.
No, I never had that. No.
Yeah, if you have that, then I'll be very impressed.
What the hell is that?
I didn't even know it existed.
Is that for an actual plane?
It's a controller for one game on the Xbox. It's called Steel Battalion. And
the robot mecha game.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
exactly.
Again, that controller is. If I was going to play that game, I would buy that controller because that's the way they designed it. 2 or 360 6-button Genesis controller is the best for me. Yeah, I can agree with you. I can understand that. I love the 6-button typeface for arcade games. If you like arcade games, the 6 buttons there. This is for the Capcom Retro Station, which is another mini arcade system. A lovely system. This actually works on the Steam Deck. I've tested it, so that's a good thing. A USB-C type socket here that plugs in via USB, so you can actually take the USB out if you wanted to. But again, a lovely, comfortable controller you got here. Designed for Street Fighter and Mega Man games, but it's underutilized. If you have a Steam Deck, this is a really good controller to go for. Very comfortable round gate, digital interface as well. So you have that. This was exclusive for us in Europe. This is you're going to laugh at this. This is a Capcom Home Arcade. This is a device in itself. And you can say, well, this is a plug-and-play console you're holding. It's not exactly a controller. The controllers are stuck into it. So there's not much I can really do there. There were actually stickers that I could put above these two bits here. So you got your start and credit buttons. And obviously the action buttons are kind of camouflage, which you kind of think, oh, goodness me, that's a bit of they should have put colors. You can actually change the buttons if you want to change them out. You can swap them out. This is a Sanwa sticks, just like Maestro City Mini controller. Clicky controller, an Octagate. We have here an Octagate controller. This is probably the best piece of hardware with sticks I have. We've got 2-player support here, so you can play Street Fighter 2-on-2 right next to you, plug it into your TV, have it on a desk, have a laugh. It has 16 games built into it. So you got I think 1944 was on there, or 1945 Route Master. I can't remember what the name was called. You have yeah, gosh, you got loads of games. You got Strider on here. You got Ghouls and Ghosts on here. You got 16 games. You can look them up. I can't remember them all.
For Konami games, not
No,
just Capcom games.
you can mod this though to have Konami games. You can. This is moddable. You can mod this. And you can have a lot. I think people put SNK games and Capcom games on there. They get the Choco hack and they get it. I haven't bothered hacking it because I think it's good enough. The reason I bought this is because there was a game called Alien vs Predator Arcade on it, and it's made by Capcom. And that's an amazing game.
If there's a reason why you should get one of those, it's only to play Alien versus Predator, the arcade game.
Oh, it's such a good beat 'em up. It's such a good game, and the amount of credits I've thrown into this, obviously by pushing the button.
Well, cheap bastard challenge. Why get that over a Pandora box?
Okay, so the reason you want to get this is because it's built better in terms of it's got the Sanwa parts, so it's much more sturdier. I don't know what parts the Pandora box has. So you get obviously it's an officially licensed product by Capcom. Well, not by Capcom, Capcom have licensed it. The company is called Kochi Media, who made it. Now,
I mean, aren't they using the same parts like Raspberry?
No,
like a Raspberry chip for that one?
I don't know what the chip was that was used in here, but I do know that it's compatible with Capcom CPS1 and Capcom CPS2 games. Capcom CPS3 games where it struggles. So when you hack it and try to add more of the 3D style games, you're going to have issues. In all fairness, it's a really good build.
Because if Capcom was, I'm not sure if this will. I'm not sure if this is going to be a smart decision with Capcom. Like, if they actually use actual arcade style, like machinery inside that one.
Yeah.
But you can still plug it into to your HD TV. Would be nice, rather than using those Pandora box that only has one small chipset and then that's it.
I mean, this is HDMI out. This uses, I believe it's FPGA. I don't believe it's emulation, but I could be wrong because the games run really well on this, and because you have the Sanwa parts, they feel really good when playing it.
How heavy is it?
Sorry.
How heavy is it?
About a kilo, maybe a bit more, maybe 1.5 kilos. It's quite a hefty thing, I haven't weighed it, but it's quite a hefty thing. So it does have grip. Obviously,
1 kilo. Translate
what that tells
into
me,
American.
Joel, it's just the exterior that's heavy, not the inside.
No, translate that into American. How many bananas is it, or how many?
How many bananas?
About two bunches of 5, but probably 10 bananas in weight.
Okay, yeah, got it. Okay, kilos. What kind of thing?
You got the grip.
We're not doing the metric system here. We do it in pounds.
Whatever.
It's okay. But anyway, but it's like you got HDMI out already. Now, to answer your question with the Pandora's box thing, it depends on which Pandora's box. There's so many different varieties out there now. It depends on what sticks that the Pandora's box have used. My friend Darren actually has a Pandora's box unit, and he's got so many more games. So if you want more games and you want to pick and choose, Pandora's box is the solution. It's there. This is more for if you're a purist, you like the Capcom games, this is it. I have actually dropped this, by the way. It still works. I've actually lifted it by the sticks as well. This is actually very well built. It's built like a tank because it has Sanwa parts, and this is the point I'm trying to rate, which is the parts that it's made with. Like a Pandora's box might break down after years of use because of they're not the sticks aren't built. This is a micro switch unit. It's built really well. You can hack this as well, so it can be just like a Pandora's box. You can add it all in there. But like I said, Capcom CPS1 and 2 predominantly, we're talking like the high-end 16-bit games will it run. If you go beyond that, we're talking like 3D, really CPS3 and beyond. This will struggle. It's not built for that. But
for the twin-stick machine, there's only one game that I'd probably hack onto that. Robotron,
Yeah, so... Again, like it is moddable. It is moddable. It's not an issue, but I didn't bother modding it in the end because I was happy with the 16 games that came with it. And in all fairness, I loved it. Another point you can't see is the GUI. The GUI on this is outstanding. And Pandora's box, the GUI is whatever they want. It's just a list of games, isn't it? And you just play a game. That's really it. But
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's a lovely finish. It's an officially licensed product, and that's why I buy it. So it's two different markets you're looking at. People want official things like me. But the Pandora's box is there if you just want a cheaper. It's probably cheaper to get Pandora's box in this, to be fair. But you might want to change up the buttons and sticks if you want a much more professional feel with soundbar parts. But
Say the line, Joe.
Sorry?
Say the line, Joe. Because
Ain't nobody got time for that.
yes,
some people do. You say that some people do. There's also
some people do. Yes, definitely.
There's also an SNK.
Oh, some people have some people have dump time for that.
Yeah, some people have time for that. Yeah, whereas some people like me just want to spend the money, just do it, and then if it breaks down, just get another one.
In terms of the value for money proposition, the Pandora's box is that. Yeah, but if you want quality, and you don't need a million games, and you just need 16 games to choose from that are quality games. This was actually a very good product. I got it on clearance for less than £100 at a shop. Now they're like 200 now. So that was a retail price when they came out anyway. But that's fundamentally my products. I did miss I have a pair of wirelessness controllers by Acclaim and all sorts of things at my parents' house. And that's generally the evolution of controllers. Obviously, you can see that as each generation has gone on, we've got more buttons, we have more features such as rumble features, analog sticks. We've got 3D video games now to make it much more easier to navigate 3D games. So, touch settings, microphones built into controllers now. It's just a matter of developers taking advantage of all these features the controllers has. We just mentioned with the PS4 controller, who actually used the touch thing on there. In all fairness, I'd rather have... One thing I loved about the Cube, I know a lot of people make fun of the Cube for being a failure. The GameCube actually utilized that controller fully for the games that were designed for it. And one thing I like about Nintendo post-Cube is with all their controllers and input devices for their systems, they fully utilized it with their first-party games for it. I think that's why people really love Nintendo. One of the things I like, also, I've got my Cyber Stick here. Fully a good way to immerse yourself in games. We're not just talking controllers, we're talking about accessories now. Sticks that you can really have fun with. And that's the whole point of video games, to have fun, to really be immersed in the game, to have so much joy playing those games and having that tangible feel like you're part of the game. So I think that's the direction controllers have gone in. And accessories, you've got VR sets now. We haven't mentioned VR sets. That's another way to enjoy video games. And it's just amazing that we came all the way from just a stick with one button to something much, much more advanced, or many consoles which have controls that are much more advanced in how we interact with those games. And also the graphics and the depth of games and memory have gotten bigger, and the controllers for those systems reflect that. But it's always nice to look back and enjoy the simplicity of these sort of games, because sometimes I think you say ain't nobody got time for that. Well, with some of these other games, they're so complicated. Some of them, I just don't have the patience for it to wait for the game to load and get into a game, because it's too deep. I just want something quick and easy to get into, and that's why, for me, out of all the controls, I'll always prefer, the 6-button Mega Drive controller. That's it, and the games on it are good enough for me. But everybody's different. Different people want different things, and the majority of people want more depth. They want more graphics. They want more immersiveness, and they want to have more joy in those games, as time goes on. And I think that's what's going to happen in the future. One thing that I would say is, with this current generation, Nintendo, with their Joy-Cons, they've really let a lot of people down, even though they're the second most popular selling console of all time. Their next system, they're better not like that, get their act together when it comes to the controller, because there's nothing more worse than having a controller that doesn't work for you. That's the thing, and that's what I want. My least favorite controller is the Joy-Cons for the Switch. But strangely enough, it's one of the newest controllers out there. So yeah, it's just my final thoughts on controllers. So yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
In my case, if I'm going to say something to close the episode, especially with emulation going rampant as of now, going retro specifically, I'm one of those game streamers. As much as possible, I don't really like emulating games. I feel like if I'm going to play an actual console, I rather play it with the actual hardware. That means with the actual with the actual controller that it came with. Okay. When I played Chrono Trigger, I wanted to play it on an actual SNES. When I played Final Fantasy 4, I wanted to play it on an actual Mega Drive, because if I'm the type of person that I really want to experience the the time period when these old games came out. It's a
Yeah.
good immersive experience if you're actually holding the actual controller with the actual console.
The game
That's
was
why,
designed around.
right?
There's
Uh,
yeah, I totally agree. 100% agree with you. 100%. There was a
uh,
gentleman I know. He's like, why? So we know with these mini consoles you can mod them, and he's put Sega Mega Drive games on the SNES Classic Mini. And I'm thinking there's a special place in hell for people who do that because there's something wrong
yeah,
about that. Because when I was growing up, nobody had both. Like, Viraj, you were spoiled. You had both these systems. So I just laughed at him, thinking, okay, maybe I was lucky, yeah. But he goes, yeah, but you have that muscle memory. That's the key term he used, muscle memory. When I'm playing Earthworm Jim, I prefer the SNES controller, you know? And I thought, all right, fair enough. But I played it on the Mega Drive. And when I did my builds for my Mega Drive and SNES Mini, I kept it purely Nintendo on the SNES one, purely Sega on the Sega one. The controllers are mapped around the games that are programmed around. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. It's part of that experience. And yes, with RPGs, you can argue, turn-based RPGs, you don't need to have the controller because it's not an action style game. It's turn-based, isn't it? And you got
oh yeah.
D-pad. Yeah. But in all
With,
fairness, it's not.
I mean, especially with Saturn games and Dreamcast games being readily emulated at the moment, because before we can't, especially with
Yeah.
the Saturn.
Yeah.
So games like, for example, like for the Saturn, like Magic Knight Ray Earth or Panzer Dragoon Saga. I like playing that. I like playing those games with the actual, with the actual Saturn controller. If I'm
Yeah.
going to play when I played Skies of Arcadia, I wanted to play it with an actual Dreamcast. I mean, say what you will about the actual feel of the Dreamcast controller on your hands.
Yes.
It's just plays different
Plays-
rather than playing it. Rather playing the GameCube port
Yeah, Legend,
of,
yeah.
of Skies of Arcadia. It still feels different if you're using the actual Dreamcast controller.
Correct. Yes. There's something to be said about that. There's a comment in the comment section here by 2Wheel360. He's been talking. Well, we've been talking. The input lag, especially with NES games, is atrocious. Now, on the subject of that, and you might find this really interesting. With input lag and modern controls, wireless controls. I just want to throw away these myths away. I mean, it depends on the system, of course, with input lag. Now, this is a Switch Online controller, and I use this on my SNES Classic Mini. It's an 8-bit Bluetooth dongle. It's the Bluetooth controller, not 2.4 gigahertz, Bluetooth. Now, when I connected it to my SNES and NES Classic Minis, there's so much. It's actually a better controller connection than the ones that came in the box. In fact, input lag is severely reduced with this wireless controller because it's Bluetooth based, and maybe it's because the Nintendo handshake exists between the two controllers and it works really well. So yes, I agree. There was actually a period where wireless controllers, there was a degree input lag with 2.4 gigahertz. People always preferred wired because they always thought that was a secure, better connection. But it depends. With this sort of thing, with the Switch Online controllers, and you play it on a Mini, it's actually better than the controllers you get with it. The NES Classic Mini and SNES Classic Mini. The 2.4 gigahertz controllers on the Mega Drive Mini, again, same kind of thing. Less lag when you play the wireless than the cabled ones for some weird reason. That's just the case. And this is a 2.4 gigahertz controller. I did try using the Switch Online 6-button controllers for the Mega Drive Mini. There isn't much of a difference in lag. It's more or less the same in terms of input, but they don't map themselves as well as the 2.4 gigahertz. In fact, it's a weird mapping, which is why I can't use the Switch Online controllers for the Mega Drive Mini. But going back to the subject of input lag, there's an ambiguity there, and you really have to test every controller out. And if you feel any lag, all I will say about input lag when it comes to controllers, you're going to get some with any games or any systems, and you're going to get it. But a real gamer will adjust to the lag. Okay, don't complain about it. Adjust to it. I know it can be off-putting if there's 11 frames of lag, which is quite yeah. But if it's like 3 to 5, come on, man, get a grip. It's not. You're not going to die. But yeah, I agree that it is a turn off with controllers, and there shouldn't be. I should try the newer 8-bit do controllers. Last I played Outrun on the NES Punch Out. Sorry, Outrun Punch Out on the NES Mini, and there was lag on the included controller. You could try, yeah. So with the NES Mini controller, yes, there's going to be a bit of lag with the one you get with it. Try the 8-bit do ones, or try the Switch Online ones because they're amazing. Yeah, Switch Online with the 8-bit do dongle that's the best connection, in my opinion, that I've ever had. And I've experimented with the Switch, with the NES Mini for quite some time. NES and SNES, because I mod them and I play around with input devices. But no, I hear you with that. You know, I don't know what the 8-bit do controllers are like with the NES Mini, but I'm sure they'll be better than the one that you get with it in the box. Yeah, and the same with the SNES Mini. Like the wireless solution tends to be better, I tend to find. Yeah, give it a go. Give it a go. What's the worst that can happen to? I'm glad I made a difference with this podcast, and we get some sort of discussion, because these are things people don't talk about. You know, talk about lag and what's the better controller. And I know you've just tuned in, mate, but have a look at the whole episode, because we talked about a lot of controllers and a lot of things and my opinions, and you might find it an eye-opener. You might learn something, you know, and maybe it'd be nice if more people can interact, because we can learn from each other. But yeah, give it a go. Give it a go for sure. Right, it's 2 hours 21 minutes.
All right.
Yeah,
That's been almost 2 hours and 30 minutes, guys. And that's the show. So before we end it here, let's just go straight to our affiliates, Streamyard and BitMap.
Mm.
Do you like playing video games? Do you like reading about history? Do you like learning about video game history? Then you should give yourself the gift of owning some video game history books from BitMap. Since 2014, BitMap Books have published numerous colorful and well-detailed hardbound books about video games, ranging from the different video game consoles of old and the various video game genres that will surely pique the interest of its core fanbase. BitMap's team of global video game journalists, players, and illustrators have produced numerous award-winning titles that celebrate the software, hardware, and developers that laid down the foundations for the billion-dollar video game industry we all know and love today. International shipping is also available with careful and considerate packaging from BitMap Books. If you don't want to take my word for it, then you can believe the people, almost 10,000 satisfied customers who submitted their glowing written reviews and video reviews after receiving their books from BitMap. By ordering your first BitMap book using our link, you will also be supporting the Timeless Gamers Show in spreading our love of video games and their rich history. Start your own online live streams, webinars, podcasts, online classes, and virtual presentations with Streamyard. By using Streamyard's user-friendly interface, you can also do simultaneous multi-streaming if you have accounts to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and other platforms. If live streaming is not your style, video and audio recordings are also available, especially with those who have variable and inconsistent internet connections. The finished output will still come out as clear and well articulated, exactly as you originally intended. You can also customize the appearance of your presentation, like green screen effects, facial touch-ups to smoothen out those facial blemishes, multiple cameras for multiple guests joining in the discussion, your own wallpaper on the background, adding your own logo as a watermark, sharing videos from your own computer or other website for added visual aids with or without audio, uploading your own background music if you wish to set the mood when talking, and lots more. Before you can enjoy all of the wonderful full features of StreamYard, you can start with a 14-day free trial by using our link. Not only that you are supporting the Timeless Gamer Show, but you can see it for yourself how easy it is using StreamYard.
Right.
And yeah, that's it, guys. So let's do our shameless plugs. Server Raj, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on the Sega Genesis group on Facebook, where I loiter, but I'm also on YouTube. You'll find me under the Sega Mega Masters channel. Just type in Sega Mega Masters, and it's me and the lads talking about. We review a bunch of Sega Genesis Mega Drive games, and it's a lot of fun there. You can also find me on Twitter. I have a side business where I buy and sell retro video games. Just search Bygone Games UK. I'll also be trading at the Milton Keynes Gaming Market here in the UK on September 14th. So that's where I'll next be. I'll also be in Nottingham on October 13th at that gaming market, and I'm back in London for November 10th. So that's where you can find me. But yeah, that's a wrap, guys.
All right, thank you for that, Sir Viraj. Just plugging this in. So, Recollects of the Retro Gamers Collectors of the Philippines is having their major gaming event August 17 and 18, 2024. They already had their first day earlier, and they are back tomorrow, Sunday, at QQ Mall. This is right. This is just right next to Isitan Recto for all of you guys living in the Metro Manila area. Cosplays, gunpla exhibitions, free plays of old consoles and new consoles, video game related buy and sell, old games, new games, peripherals, accessories, all of that. Just go to the Recollects gaming event August. So they're still back tomorrow, Sunday, August 18, Sunday 2024, QQ Mall, basement level area, Quezon Boulevard, Quiapo, Manila, right next to Eastern Recto. Our guys from Retromancy, namely Shuffle Emporium and Studio.ph, Sir Raymond leading the charge on our booth right there on that event. Please go and check it out, and you might surprise yourselves on what you may find. And that's the show, guys. Thank you to you. Thank you to everyone who made it this far. 2Will360, Sir Jomar, Ray Q, Miss Eileen, Sir JDM, Sir Ray Q, as I mentioned earlier, Kurt Labrado. Thank you all so much. Sir Eric Wahlberg for dropping in, and Bora Kanoika, and Jay Bertol. So that's it, guys. We will see you next time. On behalf of Sir Joel, he had to go early. Sir Ray, Miss Eileen, Sir JDM, Sir Dan, Miss Hinu, and Sir Drew. Our games and our bodies may grow out of date, but our gaming experiences will forever remain. Hey,
Timeless.
See you guys. Thank you so much.
Bye.